Welcome to this week's episode of Campbell and Jones Meet the Monsters, the show where we chart the cinematic lineage of the great classic monsters. I'm John Campbell. With me, as always, Brendan Jones.
John, I'm sorry that I was clearing my throat when you first started. So I think the audience gets to hear, like, hi, and
oh, God. All right, I'm ready to go.
Do you want to take that over?
No, we're good.
Okay, good.
I didn't even hear it on my headphones, so if you hadn't pointed
Good.
it out, I think we've drawn more attention to it now.
Well, that's what I wanted to do, is to do a little sleight of hand and distract from everything else that's going on in the world.
That's
Hello,
our job.
John. Happy New Year again. We are in 2021.
Yeah.
And it's off to a roaring start. And we're 3 movies into our Hammer monster movie-a-thon.
We are, and we're already back at Frankenstein.
Yeah, they weirdly, Hammer seems to be very determined to follow the Universal timeline, because the next one will be the Mummy again. I mean, it doesn't go back to Dracula for a while, so you're like,
no, it takes them a shockingly. I mean, I've never watched these movies in correct order, like as they came out. It takes longer than I would have thought to get back to Dracula, because you think of Frankenstein as Dracula as the 2 big ones at Hammer.
Just go back and forth, and they do go back and forth at some point, but there's a reluctance on Christopher Lee's part to come back to Dracula.
Well, if you look at the timeline of it, it's a lot of Frankenstein up front, and then a lot of Dracula at the back end of the Hammer history.
That's very true. And we also, of course, have the one-off, like, Brides of Dracula, which is not
where Cushing's way cool to come back as Van Helsing, but Lee's like, leave me out of it.
I will not be there. Get some blonde dude, okay?
Which, to be fair, though, give me more Van Helsing, man, and give me more Cushing. We continue to edge into crushing on Cushing on this show.
It is Peter Crushing.
Yeah, Peter Crushing. That was it. Yeah,
that was it. Because we can't get enough of that guy, and it's true. He's the heavyweight in this as well.
I kept the whole time I was watching this movie. I was just going, "Oh, Peter Cushing."
I respect how long it takes this movie to get to anything approaching what we know of as Dr. Frankenstein and Creature, and I didn't care.
I didn't either.
Because Hammer has so successfully, by this point, 2 movies in, shifted focus from what he creates to him himself. And I could watch this guy work his sociopathic way through society, and
Cushing is so fucking compelling.
I'm down for it.
I just like he already was one of my favorite actors like ever, and now he's just crawling up the list of favorite actors the more we watch these. I'm going like, was this guy the best? Like he just commands the screen.
He does, and the material is good. It's not that the material won't always be so good, but he will always rise above it and never look down on it, and he will sell it. And that is
he was a professional. He was there to do his job.
Consummate professional with the talent in spades.
Yeah.
Just love
honestly, the dude was very much slumming it in these movies. He should have been he should have been at the heights of his peers,
He did some amazing other things. Even during this period, though, Hammer was like the steady job. It was the steady paycheck.
Yeah.
And he would go off and do other things. Some were very important, but he never was the lead in them. And that was what I don't understand. He was always, he's an interesting supporting character, and he got to do a great walk-on here, and you did a thing with this established.
Yeah. I don't get it either, because like this guy is more compelling than some of the leads in those movies that we're talking about.
Indeed. So like with my little summary that I tend to do this week, just like I did last week, I'm going to dole out factoids on Mr. Cushing this week, as I did with Mr. Lee last week.
Excellent.
And I'll just fluctuate between the two, because we're going to be talking about both Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing for a good long while.
And I'll tell you,
I don't want to just info dump everything at once.
True, and we are never going to get sick of these guys.
Yeah.
They're the best. Anyway, Yes, give us some background on Mr. Cushing and the Revenge of Frankenstein.
Oh, I will. In March 1957, 2 months before their watershed film The Curse of Frankenstein was released, Hammer correctly read the weather and planned a sequel already. They originally were going to call The Blood of Frankenstein. I'm glad they didn't. Would have caused confusion over here since we changed Dracula to Blood of Dracula. Yeah, it's the whole thing. So during pre-production with the same creative team that we had last time of director Terence Fisher and writer Jimmy Sangster, who had shepherded the first film and the subsequent successful launch of Dracula, Hammer Films was also, at the same time, partnering with American film studio Columbia and TV production company Screen Gems on a pilot for a proposed TV show called Tales of Frankenstein. The pilot was shot. Was finished, and it was finished actually around the same time they wrapped up this film, Revenge of Frankenstein, but it was never aired, as Hammer balked at Screen Gems' meddling with the show. And that's why we never got to see a late 50s Frankenstein TV show.
Now this
because America ruins everything.
I believe if you watch the Hammer documentary that is on Amazon, you can see little bits and pieces from it.
Oh, you can see it. Yeah, you can actually track it down.
Oh, can you? Okay, I will.
Yeah, it just didn't air on TV and was not picked up. Because, again, they were trying to Americanize it so much, and Hammer was like, why did you even bring us into this?
Yeah.
If what you're going to do is turn out some cheesy American TV show, which is not what you wanted. Mm-hmm. But that's Hollywood. Yay!
Oh, Hollywood.
But luckily, America didn't get its grubby little hands on 1958's The Revenge of Frankenstein, a sequel, much like James Whale's Bride of Frankenstein, that actually benefits from breaking free of its original source material and going wherever its imagination
America
takes
definitely
it.
Didn't get their hands on this. This, dare I say, might be more British than the first Frankenstein movie.
Oh, yeah. And again, we're watching the escalation, which is interesting watching these in order because we're seeing Hammer get its feet and go, can we do this? Mm-hmm. Can we push this button a little bit? And you're like, oh, dudes, we're in for it.
That we are.
Press of the day were actually very curious as to how Hammer planned to pick up from the previous film, which ended with Baron Frankenstein on his way to the guillotine. Studio chief James Carreras answered, "Oh, well, we sew his head back on again." Despite such cheek.
I would have loved that as the beginning of the movie.
I know. The studio proved once again that they got how the horror genre works. Said director Terence Fisher, "It's no good having your tongue in your cheek when you are making horror films. You must be completely sincere."
Fuck yeah, Terence Fisher.
I know, he gets it. The Revenge of Frankenstein, just as sincere as they come, had its world premiere on August 27th, 1958. I know you'll like this, John.
Oh, yes.
In attendance was the leading lady of Universal's Bride of Frankenstein, our own beloved Valerie Hobson.
Yay!
Was there, along with her husband, John Perfumo.
Less excited about her being married.
He of the later sex scandal.
Yes.
I unfortunately couldn't find any record of what she thought of the film. I mean, God could only imagine what went through that woman's head watching what had become of Mary Shelley's creation. But I mean, Bride was a big step away as well. So she could only sit there going, we could not do that back in the day.
Good Lord. Okay.
Now, we don't know what she thought, but we certainly know what the critics thought. And once again, the reactions were mixed.
I read some of these.
Everything from immaculately tailored, gripping and intriguing story, faultless atmosphere from the Kinematograph Weekly to the Observers.
I completely agree with that.
Yes, to the Observers, a vulgar, stupid, nasty, and intolerably tedious business. Notice that anytime they're being priggish, I'm going to do that kind of a voice.
Well, because it has to be. It has to be.
I know. That was a really nice summation. Thanks, the Observer.
Did you see the one from the Daily Telegraph?
Yes, you do it.
The Daily Telegraph was so horrified by what they saw on the screen, they suggested the BBFC, which I believe is the British Film Council, create a special new category for the film, for sadists only.
which can only drive box office. The people who really were going, this is the worst of the worst. I can't imagine anything more dreadful.
Well, and
has to have gotten a few people like butts in seats.
I mean, to this day, if I hear that something like that in a review, I rush out to see that movie. But the thing that I find so fascinating about this is I think this one is less sadistic than the previous Frankenstein movie.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. As a film, as a character, Baron Frankenstein just is the worst.
No question. But I'm just talking about as a movie. I feel like there's less sadistic, grisly acts in this one.
Yeah, weirdly, Frankenstein is successful in this film, and for the most part, and it's a bunch of exterior factors that create something horrific. So it's kind of a very interesting take. Frankenstein keeps perfecting his stuff, and you're like,
yeah,
should this guy be allowed to keep going? Because he's on the cusp of something. Anyway, box office this time around for this particular film, however, while respectable, didn't actually achieve the same heights as the previous outing.
Interesting.
That's okay.
Because they made like 6 more of these.
I know. The first one, though, was just a huge unexpected. It made 30 times its
well,
cost.
and I think that was even the case with the Universal movies we talked about, the box office grosses, those early ones. People were, because it's a brand new thing too. It's like, oh my god, I gotta see this. This time around, people are more like, we saw the Frankenstein.
Like, oh, okay, great. Yeah, it'll be another one of those Hammer things.
Yeah.
So as I said, similar to last week where I was doling out factoids from the life of Christopher Lee, I'm going to start doing the same with his equally fascinating and frequent co-star, Mr. Peter Cushing. Here are this week's factoids. Are you ready, John?
I am ready.
Do you need to sit back a little? Do you need to get something to drink?
Yeah, I need to prepare myself. All right, go ahead.
Okay, good. Though not from the same high class and worldly background as his friend Christopher, Peter Wilton Cushing grew up in a comfortably upper-class household where his father, George, a quantity surveyor, actively discouraged any interest of Peter's in theater. It's one of those typical stories of like, not my son. I find this interesting, though, because that's very telling, since Cushing's grandfather, meaning his dad, George's dad, was in fact a lifelong stage actor.
Wait a minute. I think we're starting to see some daddy issues on his father's part.
I believe so.
And won't be like my useless father.
Here's the thing I love about finding this out about Peter Cushing's grandfather being a stage actor. His grandfather actually toured with the great Henry Irving. Henry Irving, legendary British stage actor, was also stage's first Dracula.
That's true.
Dracula, the character, along with Cushing's own Professor Van Helsing, was actually invented by Henry Irving's longtime assistant, Bram Stoker. That's like a 2 degrees of separation from the creator of Van Helsing to a guy who ended up playing him.
He was destined
successfully for so very, very long. So that blew my mind.
He was the chosen one. He was born to be Professor Van Helsing.
And here's the last one before we go. Cushing was the younger of 2 sons, and his mother had so wanted a daughter this time around that for the first few years of Peter's life, during the height of World War I, she dressed him in girls' clothes and tied his long curly hair in ribbons.
That's adorable.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Peter Cushing. The prettiest little girl you'll ever meet.
Christopher Lee's got a lot of interesting facts in his past there, but he doesn't have that.
He does not have that. I have no idea what that actually adds to the soup that becomes one of our favorite actors on this podcast. But I still could not resist mentioning the fact that for the first few years of his life, he was dressed as a pretty little girl. Okay.
Now, prepared him for a performing life of being something other than I don't know.
That could be it. Sure, a lifelong dress up. He also was a comics nerd. Maybe I should have saved that one for later.
Was he?
Well, early, obviously, comics, meaning comic strips. If we're talking the 20s.
I know. But you're making me love this man even more.
He loved toys. He loved comics, and would put on puppet show productions as a child for his parents with the toys he had bought based on the comic strips he had read. So yeah, he was a nerd. I love this guy. I love him.
He just keeps getting better and better.
So that's the little wrap up today, and I'm enjoying finding out with each one of these films because it's just sort of watching this. I mean that this film company had been around since the 30s, as I'd said before, so it's not like they're brand new. But here's where their name is really getting out there, because other than sporadic little hits that would get some attention, they were never one of the big studios. They just weren't.
And they didn't have an identity as a studio either. It wasn't like, oh, this is a Hammer picture. It just happened to be a Hammer movie.
Well, they started as a production company, and when you do that, obviously at that point, you're not seen as a creator. You're seen as someone who's just schlepping around other stuff.
Right.
But yeah, so this is great watching them go, oh, we have the talent. Let's follow this, and we're doing this well. And we will talk about Terrence Fisher more and Jimmy Sangster as well.
We'll
because
have plenty of opportunity for them, too.
We will. We're going to be with these folks, specifically Sangster, for a long, long time.
And hey, I am fine with it. These guys, these are the hands we want to be in.
Indeed. So let's, you know what, John? I feel like taking a look at the poster.
Hey, there we go. Well, this one's a doozy of a poster. There's no question about it. There's a lot to talk about on this poster.
Now, you're going to be looking at the U.S. one again.
Yes, I'm looking at the one that this time released by Columbia.
Yep.
So we've had 3 different American distributors for these movies.
Yeah. And Columbia, that's who they were in deals with for that TV show. So this is all sort of synchronicity.
But it's interesting that it was Warner Brothers who put out
Dracula.
They put out Dracula? Sorry, then it was Universal who put out Frankenstein. It's just interesting. You would have thought that they would have stuck with that for the sequels.
Apparently not.
Yeah.
Apparently every single deal was being redone.
And that's part of the problem as to why these movies are not... You can't buy one big box set of them like the Universal
movies. That does drive me nuts. I wish there would be some sort of across the board, like, guys, let's just all share in this, because what people really want is that definitive...
We do have to hunt these down individually.
Sweet box set.
Because I have some box sets that have like 6 or 7 movies in them, but they're all over the place.
Yeah, I just have strays.
Yeah.
I even have a couple of burned discs from way back in the day.
Oh, wow. You turned into Dennis Miller, baby, when you said it like that.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to make sure that this is on the
get
DL.
off on a rant here.
Hey, babe. Terrible Dennis Miller, and I'm okay with that. Yeah. I'll go to my grave satisfied that I could not do a good Dennis Miller. So
it's just a head nod and a come on. I just do Carvey's Dennis Miller.
Hey, did you like me in the net?
Yeah.
And I did.
Yeah. He brought much needed levity to that movie. Yeah.
This poster has our creature.
Yes.
At his most creatured, because he doesn't start this way.
And he's very green, as the Frankenstein monster is oft portrayed in color.
And yet this film is in color.
Yeah.
So people going to this theater can't even for a second think that's what he's going to look like, because they know he's not going to be green. Or
exactly.
They'll walk out going, hey, he was never green.
Excuse me, I want my money back. The creature was never green at any point in the runtime.
Here's what I love about this design. The creature is being strangled.
I was just going to say, in a twist on classic monster, Frankenstein monster, now the creature is the one being strangled. And he's giving the audience of the poster here a look going, can you believe this?
I've sunk so low.
I used to be the one doing the strangling.
I like that that revenge in the title.
Yeah.
The text is up at the top. Revenge has stitchery across it.
Yeah, I love that too.
That's great.
That's great. And then the other thing I love about it is they just had to find a way to cram a woman into the poster, even though it doesn't fit. So there's just this little inset panel of some woman in modern clothes.
50s woman.
Yeah. She's
This
not
movie
a character
takes
in
1860s,
Yeah.
which in fact it starts off telling us it's 1860.
Yeah. By the way, I like that because we talked often on the Universal movies about it was unclear what year it ever was.
Right. So this woman is an audience member, I guess. She's running away.
I think that's the case here, because the thing is, you want to talk about taglines. This one has 3 on this poster alone.
It does. Man, the U.S. posters do not shirk on taglines.
This 4, technically, if you count the Technicolor one, which at the very bottom it says Supernatural Technicolor. But here at the top we have new and greatest Frankenstein monsterpiece.
Oh, that's good. You gotta get it's right up there with Fantastic.
I mean, that is aggressively 1950s advertising. Monsterpiece.
It's a monster piece.
And then we have the image of the monster being choked here in the title, and then we have, "We dare you to see it. We double dare you to forget it."
I hate being dared, and I hate that kind of pressure. It's peer pressure, is what it's telling me.
Yeah, it's giving me a little anxiety about watching the movie. That's a lot. That's a lot, Hammer.
It's like, okay, maybe I'll see it. Okay, but the double dare, I don't know. Will I be able to forget it?
Yeah.
I don't.
And then they double dog dare you to tell your friends about it.
Shit. That's not on the poster, John. Don't mislead our listeners. There's no double dog dare.
That was on the original first draft of the poster. It kept going. There were several more increasing dares.
We don't have enough room for all that text.
So then I do love, so we have this woman, clearly what would have been at the time a contemporary woman, running, and it says, "If you go alone, ... you'll find yourself running all the way home.
Because you'll have forgotten where you parked your car."
This movie's so good, you won't remember where your car is by the end of it.
Bus schedules right out of your head. You'll just have to run home alone.
You'll have questions about who you are, even. This movie occupies 100% of your brain.
She does have one hand to her forehead like, oh my God, something's gone wrong with my brain. Maybe she has forgotten everything. Oh. What's my address? Says the little word balloon coming out of her mouth.
This movie's been dubbed a national menace. Yeah, it's
that's the American poster. If you click one over, you'll see the original British one. Always look for the X, because when it has that on there, you know, all right, the X certificate is what they would get these Hammer films in Britain.
One over.
Yeah.
Is that the? Oh no, that's still the American. Hang on. Oh wait, here we go.
The new,
there it is.
Most terrifying Frankenstein, the world's greatest horrorama.
And then for some reason, there's a mummy on it.
Yeah. Now, granted, the creature, or at least the one at the very end, is all wrapped up for a little bit, hanging in a tank.
But it's very mummy-ish still here.
Yeah,
that's sort of like.
This is even more misleading, and the art is terrible.
But even this all wrapped up guy is scared of the big face of the monster. He's like, "Argh."
Yeah, the monster's face here looks even worse and less like it does in the movie, and is green again.
Yeah, and he's just kind of giving a like, "How you doing?"
Yeah, hey, I'm looking at you with my one good eye.
That's right. Hey, you want to come see this movie I'm in?
I got this one good eye.
It's a horror-rama.
It's a monster piece.
Hey, where you going? Come on.
Hey. Oh, we was friends. I don't know why he sounds like that, but that's what he sounds like.
Damn. Lost and another one.
Actually, we know what he sounds like in this one, because this guy got so much luckier than Christopher Lee.
Yeah.
His creature gets to talk.
I kept thinking, poor Christopher Lee, this was the one to have. This is an actual character who has feelings, and this is a far more compelling monster in this movie.
Yes, because it's actually not a monster.
No, he's a monstar. No.
Very nice.
There are a couple more taglines, believe it or not. Still, first we have the very bland and of course obvious, "The terror rises again."
Yeah.
And the sensational sequel of The Curse of Frankenstein, which smashed records throughout the world.
Damn.
Warning, be sure you can take this tremendous adventure in terror.
You know what? I just got to say, I appreciate them giving me that warning.
Yeah.
It allows me some I can actually examine myself.
And
Am I ready?
I
for
love
this?
the warning of it too. I love the wording of it. It's like, warning. Hey, be sure. All right, you may think, but just be sure that you can handle this.
Yeah. Do you have anyone you can talk to to clear you for this movie?
I do love, please don't scream too loudly. You may scare those waiting to get into the theater. That's great. That's like William Castle shit. I love it.
Yes, I was about to say we're getting into the golden age of how to pitch these.
I love the huckster advertisement of movies back in this era. It's the best.
It really is.
The whole world trembles before the new Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Remember that the screams you hear will be your own. And then there must have been some image that accompanied "This Could Be You" after the Revenge of Frankenstein, but I don't know what the image is. So
yeah, I know. It's like, what? Wait, I need to know what could be me.
And then finally, we have one that reminds me of "Thrills to Fill the Tills" and things like that. We have "Terror will seize you, tension will squeeze you, chills will freeze you."
Yes.
By the way, I don't care for any emotion squeezing me.
I don't want to be squeezed or frozen.
Yeah, no, that's not all right.
I often will leave a theater if it's too cold, and I'll complain to the manager.
So we get the AC down a little bit. This Frankenstein.
What am I? A side of beef? You think I'm about to go bad?
Yeah, I love to do bits with the theater managers. That's the thing. Wait, what do you take me for?
You know what it does? It spices up their day.
It does. They go like,
they appreciate it.
Honey, you'll never believe it. A man came in and compared himself to a side of beef today.
Here's the thing. Suddenly, I was in a bit. I wasn't expecting to be in a bit when I went to work today.
People who have such little experience in comedy that the idea of being in the smallest of bits is like, well, lucky me.
I'm glad I remembered the rule of yes and.
Jesus. All right. Well, let's dive into the actual bulk here of The Revenge of Frankenstein. So the question is, how do they start this movie, having seen Frankenstein be walked to the guillotine at the end of the last movie? We just open right on a guillotine.
I know we do. We open with with two title cards, bringing us up to date.
It's a previously on Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm. Tells us about the year and tells us that Baron Frankenstein is going to be put to death, blamed for the crimes his creature committed.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, well, let's not forget that the creature certainly did some shit, but Baron Frankenstein also killed people himself.
He to be fair, he's much less homicidal in this movie.
He is, yes.
It's still up to no good.
But there's still some question of, well, how are you procuring these things? He's like, well, I got this hospital right here.
Yeah.
People die all the time.
Maybe they need a little help. Maybe they need a little help. Dennis Miller is Dr. Frankenstein.
That's not something anyone ever wanted to see.
Hey, babe, it's alive.
Now I know what it feels like to be God, babe. Babe. Babe.
He's just quipping for 2 hours. Even I don't know why I'm in this thing.
I love the idea that the entire film crew leaves the soundstage because they can't take it anymore, and it's just him still up there. Hey, babe. Hey.
I guess this is what you call a cold fish, am I right?
And then he makes a bunch of Clinton jokes that no one gets, or that no one hears. So, yes. So we do start right there on the guillotine.
Yeah.
Ballsy. Thank you, Hammer.
Yeah,
Ballsy.
I love this. I'm like, because it is a key point that we see him being walked to the guillotine. We do not see it fall. We do not imply that he was executed at the end of that first movie. And I did make note of that when we talked about it a couple weeks ago, because it was like, oh, well, whether they intended it or not, they've left themselves open for the sequel.
They intended, apparently. And they had already, or Jimmy Sangster had thought of what they were going to do. So we see him being led up the gallows.
Yep.
And there's the hangman wearing his cool ass hangman mask.
Very Zorro-esque mask.
There's the priest, who I couldn't tell if it was the same guy from the last movie. I wasn't interested enough to look up to see if it was or not, because he has virtually no dialogue.
Yeah.
And then there's also an assistant to the hangman who is, ladies and gentlemen, you haven't seen one of these since the 40s, but it's a hunchback. It's a poor physically.
Can I just say, by the way, just quickly looked it up, is the same priest.
Is the same priest. All right. Well, all right, good on them. Yeah. Again, it's a small company.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they just, hey, you want to come back for like half a day?
He was also sweeping up at the time. They were like, were you in the last movie? Come on in.
Hey, we still have that collar.
Yeah.
Great. Oh, yeah. That's great.
Yeah. This guy just got this role because he was the only person they knew who had a priest outfit.
But so we have the hunchback guy who also has a withered arm, and a fucked up eye.
Yeah, it's like, boy, you thought Universal's hunchbacks were messed up. Check this guy out.
Oh, and one of his legs is bad because he limped.
He's got a bum leg too. I mean, this guy's a mess.
He's a mess.
Yeah,
but he gives a knowing look.
By the way, what was his purpose there in general? Like, what did the executioner and priest think this guy was doing there?
No, I mean, that's why I thought, is he the executioner's handyman? But then I thought maybe, because obviously Frankenstein has to have struck up some sort of friendship or relationship with him.
Yeah.
So I assume he's the prison janitor or something. Prison somebody.
Sweeps up, yeah.
Because he is, obviously, they've had conversations.
Oh, yeah. This is Carl. This is old Carl.
This is Carl. What's weird is Carl will end up being played by two people. No spoilers yet. But in the credits, this Carl, Hunchback Carl, is just called Dwarf.
Yeah, which he's
played by Oscar.
He's not a dwarf.
He's not a dwarf, but he's played by Oscar Kwiatek.
Yep.
And he's good because he gets more screen time than you think. And he will be replaced by another actor in the same film as the same character.
I'll say this. He's giving a far more subtle performance than some of the hunchbacks we met in those Universal movies.
Word to your mother, John.
Some of those hunchbacks were out of control.
They really were. Or sometimes you're just sitting there going, oh, man, I love you. Why can't you get better work, Dwight Fry? Why can't you get better work?
Oh, Dwight Fry.
Anyway, so this guy, like I said, there's a knowing look between Baron Frankenstein and the executioner.
Yeah.
And then we see that guillotine go down.
Yep. We hear a scuffle first. We hear like a what?
Oh, that's right. And then but they're not showing us anything.
No,
except for
we pan up to the blade and then it falls.
Then the blade falls. That's a pretty, and of course you already know what's going on, but still, that's a great way to do it.
I love it. Yeah.
And then they cut to comedy.
Oh boy. Look, I think this movie's pretty great, but there's always got to be some shit like this.
Jimmy Sangster. Did you see on the script where it says additional dialogue by?
I did.
And that's also a fake name. In the book on the Hammer Films, they tell us who that guy really was, and there's a brief interview, and they're like, and then it's like, well, I just came in to do some punch up. I really just did some comedy bits with the grave diggers, and you're like going, oh, you're the guy to blame for all the things I didn't like.
Oh, sorry, the one part, the part of the movie that absolutely doesn't work at all. Oh, wow.
Jesus. Well, and also, what's his name? Kurt, is that the guy in the hospital who's like the?
So this guy,
I hated that guy.
This guy is only credited as Up Patient.
No, wait, no.
Isn't that him? Because his IMDb
photo.
Oh,
no, that totally is him. Okay,
his IMDb photo is him from this movie.
Yeah, that's right. Up Patient.
Yeah.
because I thought
he's in it. He's in it so much that I had to, because I always keep IMDb open when I'm watching these because I want to make sure I write people's names down correctly in my notes.
Right.
And so he's in the movie so much that I had to keep writing Victor and up patient. It's like, I can't believe this.
Richard Wordsworth is that actor. We haven't gotten him yet.
How does this character not have a name? He's in the movie so much.
He is, and a patient. Because one thing, we also get introduced to a homicidal janitor at the same hospital who appears out of nowhere and has a very important part. And you're like, why didn't they set this guy up? Or why isn't he a patient?
By the way, that guy I just called Guy because I had no idea who he was when he came into the movie.
Until later they say janitor.
Yeah, it's after the fact, but all through his scenes I just kept saying, Guy, I don't know who this is.
Yeah.
He looks like a butcher, too. He looked like he's like, hey, you. Anyway, we'll get to him.
He's so outsized important, and you're like, why didn't they set him up?
He's the what's all this then guy.
But he's the homicidal what's all this then.
Yep.
Anyway, we're not to them yet. We're with our gravedigger friends.
Yeah. Rowdy Bar. I wrote Rowdy Bar, 2 barflies. And so they're doing this whole bit here about they get this wine from the bar, and one is talking about, oh, you're always talking me into things, and I always have to do your dirty work.
Yeah. It's 2 supposedly delightful ruffians, and we're supposed to be amused by them.
When we cut to this whole scene, I'm like, we're in a fucking Dickens book now.
Yes. Yeah.
Just this whole bar and the aesthetic of everything. It's just like, oh my God.
They get too much screen time for too much banter that doesn't work.
For characters who are unimportant to anything.
So the one guy is trying to get his drunken friend to do this job that he's been hired to do, which is grave robbery. I keep calling them grave diggers, but they're grave robbers. And the drunk friend's like, you always give me these things. He's going, but you have to help me because the doctor says my heart might give out at any moment. That, by the way, is an example of the movie trying to set something up. So he says, my heart might give out. And he's like, all right, how much? He's like, oh, it's this much, 10 marks. Oh, 10 marks.
It's so weird because he's established as a guy who's trying to guilt his friend and sort of, trick his friend into doing this. But he really does have a heart problem.
He apparently really does. So the one guy with the heart problem has been hired to rob this grave.
Yeah.
And the other guy's like, oh, all right, fine, I'll help you. So then we cut to the grave.
The final thing is he's like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do with that 10 pounds. He's like, well, you didn't say it was 10 pounds.
It's 10 marks.
Oh, 10 marks.
Because
that was it.
We are clearly in Germany.
It's aggressively Germany. We do get names for places in this movie on screen.
We get names for places, and we get Frankenstein himself giving us a breakdown of just how many Frankensteins there are in Austria and Switzerland.
Yeah. By the way, if you have many questions about the lineage of the Frankenstein family, this is the movie that answers it.
And it also is actually very well thought out script writing of him going, this is how this guy can get away with this.
Yeah.
With this whole, like, I look like them, sure.
His whole thing is, I'm a Frankenstein. I'm not Frankenstein. That Frankenstein.
And that's why I changed my name to Stein. It's because I knew there was such a stigma on my family name.
Thanks to my asshole cousin.
That's pretty smart, 1860 Baron Frankenstein.
Oh, this Baron Frankenstein is an evil genius, and I love every second of it.
I do love how well he thought everything out, except for stuff that happens at the end. Anyway, so yes, our grave robber friends are now at the
grave, and of course, the guy with the bum ticker is not doing anything. He's eating there, and the other guy's digging up the grave, which is very shallow.
Who's supposed to be here? He's like, oh, who knows? And it's like, and he scrapes it off. He goes, it says Baron Frankenstein. He goes, oh, a Baron. There's going to be some money in there.
Yeah.
And then they open it up, and the guy goes, uh-oh, that's a priest in there.
It's a headless priest.
His head's kind of messed up, but this ain't good.
By the way, do you think the guy who played the priest in the first movie was like, oh, what, the priest is coming back? What's he up to this? Oh, what's that? He's decapitated in 2 minutes. Oh, I see. Well,
so no spinoff?
Yeah. And what's this? No dialogue. Okay. All right.
Fine. But I won't be scrubbing up after dinner. You're on your own.
Tell the executioner guy to clean up the tables.
So the one guy, Bug, just like, I'm not dealing with this anymore, runs away.
Yeah, and the other guy starts to run away, and he's like, well, wait a minute, let me take a look and see what's in there.
Yeah, it's like, maybe there's still, like, a priest. I'm not superstitious, and there might be something to rob out of this guy's coffin. And then someone steps out of the shadows and is like, hold up. And he's like, oh, what is this? And he goes, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Baron Frankenstein.
Oh, hell yeah. It's Cushing. Looking awesome.
Looking awesome. And just the fact that the man whose grave he thought he had dug up is standing there saying, I hired you, and I'm the guy who's supposed to be in that coffin. Our poor dude with the bad ticker has a heart attack.
I can only assume his heart exploded in his chest, and he drops right back into the grave, which I love.
And I say, so goes to all bad comic relief.
I wish more comic relief was resolved like this in these movies.
Then it's Carl the Hunchback, and our good friend the Baron cleaning up. Basically, they're like, great. There's another body down there, patting down.
Luckily, he fell. By the way, that grave was very shallow, though.
Sure.
And you just see them. They've already covered this guy up.
Like 10 minutes.
Frankenstein's putting the marker back in the ground. He's like, done and done. We're all good.
And done, and no one needed to know.
Hard cut to a title card that introduces us to Carlsbrook.
Yeah, we're in Carlsbrook.
And then,
that's a real place.
And then we get we go to the sign that says it's the building of the Medical Council of Carlsbrook.
Yeah, and it's a bunch of what you'd expect.
It's a bunch of harumphing British doctors.
Harumphing British doctors of the period. Even though, of course, they're German, but
lots
they're
of
British.
Mustaches and pipes, and
Yeah. Well, I don't understand this new Dr. Stein, who's been here for 3 years. He's never joined our council, and he keeps stealing all of our patients.
He stole all of my patients. He stole all of mine, too.
He's too good, and he runs a hospital for the poor. What's this man think he is? Someone should investigate him. Harumph, harumph.
I love how much of this movie is about medical bureaucracy. It is awesome. And it's great because they're all these Hammer characters who are like, well, we don't care for this young hotshot.
I love the dude who's the head of the medical council because he's another stereotype. He's the one he is the head of the council, but he's very timid and has kind of a sort of social stutter, and he's just like going, what should we do? And another guy who's like, you should probably send like a group of 3 of you to go check him out. He's like, yes, we should send a group of 3 of us to check him out. It sounds like a plan.
All the time, we've never revoked anyone's license and barred them from practicing medicine. I do like one of them goes, didn't your wife become a patient of his? Oh, I put an end to that.
Yeah, I told her with the back of my hand.
Anyway, I'm single now. That's over.
And very, very lonely. If any of you would like to play some cards later, I'm free.
I really found this guy's sad little story to be very interesting.
You started writing your own spinoff just for him. I get it. So they agree. They have to look into what this Dr. Stein is.
They agree to send a delegation of 3 of them to go speak with Dr. Stein. Which, by the way, Frankenstein didn't try hard, and then continues to not try hard at the end of the movie when he's changed.
At the end, he's like, you know what? There's another part of my name I didn't use.
When we meet him for the next movie, he's just gonna be Dr. Ng.
Yeah,
he just pulled the EN out, and he's Dr. Ng.
My name is Frank. In middle initial, last name Stein. It's not the most
Christopher
clever.
Lee will be Dr. Acula, and it's
I can't stuff. Or he'll be Alucard, which John, just what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you a mirror.
Yeah.
I want you to write down Alucard.
There's something about this. When I hold it up to a mirror, there's something here.
Oh, Jesus. 20 minutes of that movie.
When he's written it out on a piece of paper.
Figure it out.
If I mess around with, what is it?
That seems to suggest something.
I can't crack it. They agreed to send the delegation. We then cut to Dr. Stein's medical office, where it is all women in the waiting room. So this is a movie where, does everybody want a piece of Cushing? Is that what I'm to?
I believe so.
Yeah.
What I like about this, and it does kind of carry over from the first movie, but the idea that, I mean, Frankenstein is a full-on sociopath, and one thing sociopaths do very well is they're canny about blending into society.
Yeah.
And this movie has some very clever stuff to do with class in it, and some not so clever. But here we have this. Essentially, the monster is the doctor, but he is so good, like he was in the first movie, at like he knows everyone around him are fools.
Yeah.
He doesn't like any of these humans, but he can put on the charm, smile.
Yeah.
And yes, there's all these women, all these society ladies are coming to this Dr. Stein because he's a bachelor. He's successful. He's handsome and charming.
Yeah.
And it's clear we have this matronly lady foisting her daughter, society daughter, Deb.
We have this countess.
She's like, yes, well, I know you said that she was cured, but she's clearly not. My daughter still has palpitations of the chest and all these problems. She's faint. She has no energy. And it's basically her going, get naked for the doctor.
I was going to say, because we definitely are leaning into, we're still not fully there, but we're getting hornier Hammer. This is starting to get a hornier Hammer because she goes behind the, the divider.
What's creepy is it's the stage mom. That's what I find really creepy.
Go get ready for the doctor.
If it was her on her own going like, this is how I'm going to nab myself a rich doctor. Instead, it's the mother going, dear, you still feel bad, don't you? Yeah. Don't you? Yeah. Now get behind the curtain and drop your clothes.
So she comes out in her knickers.
Oh my God! I myself had some chest palpitations and had to stop.
Oh my!
She was in bloomers,
full on bloomers, and what red-blooded man isn't gonna, I mean,
and the thing is,
every part of her body is still completely covered.
Yes. And so Frankenstein, he knows what's up. And again, Cushing plays all of this perfectly because he's still being charming, but he's also giving away to us, the audience, like, yeah, I get this a lot. Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll play along a little bit.
This is the eighth one today.
Yeah, this is for my standing in this community, and I'll play along a little bit. And he's like going, well, I'm sorry to hear that. Let's check you out. And he pulls out like the primitive 1860s stethoscope.
Which I love. And it's just the thing on the tube with a little phone on it. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's like, oh, but the last time you used your ear. Yeah. You put your ear against my chest.
Yeah.
And he's like going, oh, well, this is just the same. Only it'll amplify. And she's like going, oh, well. And then it's like,
doctor, don't be afraid to get in there.
Yeah, basically the Countess is like, no, use your ear. Yeah. Go ahead, slap your ear on her chest. Do it. So he grins and goes,
this is a
okay.
Yeah, this is a Frankenstein who is has a little bit more control over himself, though, because he was just bedding maids and stuff in the last movie.
It's true. He's playing the game. And again, it is
I think he doesn't want to draw attention to himself, though, by banging all these women.
That's true. And also the thing with he's clearly thought through the things he did wrong in the first film. The whole idea of him opening a charity hospital for the poor is clearly him just going, there's a better way for me to get body parts from people that no one cares about. Oh, yeah. This is smart. He's just thought things through, and he's like going, stay low profile. I'm in a different city, going by a different name, and I'm going to be seen as this generous.
Because I think the Countess in the scene says, I know you care so much about your work you do for the poor, and that's so wonderful.
He's convinced everybody he's this saintly doctor.
Yeah. We never get out of the... I'm disappointed, because we see this woman later, too. We never get a, like, oh, heavens from her that I would have loved.
I know. That's a deleted scene. Yeah. Sorry, buddy.
And she faints or something like that. That would have been great. Yeah. I had to scope through the deleted scenes on the disc to find that, and I was.
You know what would have been awesome, but this is of course hindsight. Is she could have been in that society party at the end that Carl does show up at, and the secret gets revealed, and he goes Frankenstein,
and she's like,
she could have been there and gone, oh,
and then some butler catches her before she hits the ground. He's like,
we're ahead of Jimmy Sangster on this one, and I'm sorry. we had this gold to give him, but we weren't alive.
Yeah,
we weren't alive then.
That's the one thing that really could have made this movie come together. It was just missing that.
So this is our introduction to the new Frankenstein, or our new and improved Dr. Stein.
Yeah, society doctor and friend of the poor.
Man. So do we now cut to the hospital for the poor?
Yes, we do.
So you go to the lab first. No, okay.
No, he goes to the hospital for the poor because the medical council arrives there. He's already there, and the medical council shows up and says, "We need to talk to Dr. Stein."
I gotta say though, Cushing. I know that Frankenstein is the villain in these movies, but Cushing is so awesome.
Yep.
The way he dispatches them.
Yeah.
The way he shames them is just. I'm like, you're awesome, evil Dr. Frankenstein. They're like, oh, you can't do this. He's like, going, well. Okay.
Yeah, because they say, like, won't you please join the medical council? He's like, I appreciate your offer, but no. Because what have you people together as a council ever done to help these people? You know, he's like spins it around like, I'm doing the real work, like unlike you bozos. And shuts them down.
And he's, the whole thing is he's friendly with all the people there, and they all respect him. They like their Dr. Stein. This movie makes way too many references to how bad the poor smell, but there's a point to that, I guess.
Well,
there's like 18 different characters, including Up Patient.
Our beloved Up Patient, who seems to revel in how bad he smells.
Yeah, and then goes on to say, well, it's like the animals in the forest. They know what's up, and the dirt protects them, and they don't bathe. Well, okay,
and they never get sick, neither.
They never get sick, neither. They're perfect.
I base my whole life around what monkeys do.
But anyway, so we get the idea that he has got this charity hospital. He does make one point, and this is them like, hey, let's drop some foreshadowing. Is like, well, here's this one patient, and he's showing the hospital council guys like, look at his tattoo, isn't that pretty sweet? And they're like, pretty sweet tat, bruh.
Yeah, I do love like beautiful art, isn't it? Oh, we're gonna have to take this arm off.
Yeah. He goes, this is a really nice tattoo. Thanks. I go years ago. He's like, yeah, but we're gonna have to take the arm. He's like, but I need that arm for my work. He goes, what is it you do? He goes, I'm a pickpocket.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, you'll have to learn how to use your other arm, or find another job. So he's gonna take that arm off. I wonder if that arm's just gonna go in the trash.
I bet so. He just throws it behind him into a trash can. Well, done with that. And so now the medical council is going like, well, what do we do? And the timid guy's just like, well, there's nothing we can do.
we must go away and meet again and smoke our pipes and perhaps play pinochle.
We could harump some more. I don't know.
I still have several harumps to give. I budgeted my harumps, and I have plenty more.
So then Frankenstein goes back to his office, and there's a mysterious man in the shadows, which is an interesting introduction for this character.
It is, and it's not our introduction to him, but it's just for the scene, because he was in the Council of Three. I mean, he was that guy. He was one of those guys. He was the handsome young guy. But it's an interesting scene because I kept thinking that Frankenstein, who just washes his hands and gets ready to eat himself some sweet chicken, I kept expecting him to just like talk to the guy who's sitting in the shadows. I thought he would say something like, well, are you going to have some of this chicken? Like he knew he was there all along.
That would have been
no,
cool.
Apparently he didn't know he was there at all.
Yeah.
Because the guy says, hey, Dr. Stein, sorry, I've just been sitting in a chair staring at you.
He starts to cut the chicken. He says, that's an excellent dissection, Dr. Stein.
Oh, that's right. And he actually did startle Frankenstein. He was like, oh, I didn't know.
I don't like this Frankenstein to be startled. I want this guy to have the upper hand on everybody.
Yeah, I kind of thought that was the way it was going to go. It didn't go that way. But our mystery man in the shadows was the youngest of the medical council guys. And apparently he recognizes Dr. Stein.
This is Dr. Hans Cleve, played by Francis Matthews.
Cleve, get it?
Yeah.
Chop.
I do.
There you go.
I put that together.
Yeah.
We still... it's
movie
interesting. It's still like looking at this guy's IMDb, we still aren't getting like long-running Hammer people in this. Like, this is his only Hammer movie. We still don't fully have the repertory company yet.
They're piecing them together.
Yeah. And so I think everyone now is like, maybe this guy could be... Like, we know Cushing and Lee are in.
Yeah, they're in.
And we got Michael Goth last week.
Yes.
And Michael Goth will be around. But we definitely haven't gotten any of the ladies yet.
No, and even the ladies, like, with the exception of, say, an Ingrid Pitt or a couple of them, most of the ladies were only in for like 2 or 3 movies. But
which makes sense for this
era
of Hollywood, right? Like, we cycle through the hotties.
Well, but that was also kind of a Hammer thing, was they saw it as like a launch pad of like, here's the sexiest new actress, and she's going to make a couple movies for us. Meanwhile, she's now got the attention of other producers and other studios, and hopefully they go on to other things. And a lot of them actually ended up on TV and doing all kinds of things. So
it was a thing. The women of Hammer were a thing and still are. You can buy... I've seen it around the photo book that is the Women of Hammer, you know.
Sure. But it was also like the Bond girls. The Bond girls, we'll be talking about them soon.
Yeah.
But the Bond girls were like, they're in a movie.
Yep.
And they get a lot of press.
Except for the ones in this movie.
A lot of press for being the Bond girl. And then that hopefully going to launch them into something else.
And sometimes it did, and sometimes it didn't with the Bond girls. And
sometimes it did not.
Yeah.
They become a flash in the pan. Very attractive.
Well, one of the early mistakes was that they primarily cast like Miss Universe winners more than
they cast
actresses in the early Bond films.
Beauty queens and models and people like that,
and
but
then would dub over their voice with the same woman.
Yeah, some of them ended up being okay and going on to.
Ursula Andress certainly had a career.
Yeah, I mean, a career as a certain stripe.
Yeah.
And she herself actually ended up in a couple of Hammer films.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like they're 1 million years or whatever, one of the prehistoric ones.
Yeah. And 1 million years BC.
Something like that. That's not right. That's
Raquel Welch. Which was a Hammer movie though.
Which was.
Yeah.
Yeah, she counts as a Hammer girl, which is weird for an American lady.
She's in the documentary that's on Amazon talking about, I don't know what that movie was.
I still haven't watched it.
So
damn
good.
It.
Flesh and Blood, the horror Hammer, the Legacy of Hammer horror, I think it is.
Hey, John, could you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Get off my ass about that.
I will never.
How about you stop riding me? Okay.
Never. You will watch it, damn it. It's really good.
Right.
It's really good. It's super long and gives tons of facts that most people would not be interested in.
I'm all. So anyway, Cleve introduces himself, says, "I recognize you."
Yeah.
I happen to be at the funeral. And this is nice continuity.
Yeah.
I was at the funeral for Professor, what's his name?
After those universe movies, can you believe it? Previous movies factor into plots.
I know.
I can't.
The nice old German, the one only actual German actor in the previous movie, the one that Frankenstein shoved off the staircase and killed him so he could get his brain.
Would you look at this picture and step back?
Yes. So our young doctor friend Cleve was at the funeral, and he goes, and that professor, and Frankenstein's like, well, everyone knew that professor. He was famous. And he goes, yeah, and he was buried in the family crypt of Baron Frankenstein. And he goes, yeah. And he goes, in fact, you look a lot like Baron Frankenstein.
Yeah. And he's like, well, I have some connection to the Frankenstein family, but
there's a lot of Frankensteins. He goes, throw a rock in this frickin' country, you'll hit a Frankenstein. And he does go off like, well, there's Frankensteins here and there and that. And he goes, yeah, but he goes, all right, yeah, I'm a Frankenstein. I'll full on admit I'm a Frankenstein, but I didn't want to get tied in with that guy. He goes, no, not buying it because you look just like him. Yeah. He goes, all right, God damn it, you got me.
Well, I do like, I like how he's just like, so are you Baron Frankenstein? And Cushing's just like, yes. Yeah.
He's like, what are you going to do if I say yeah? And he goes, well, I'd say that I know that Baron Frankenstein is one of the most brilliant doctors of all time, and I want to learn from him, and I want to be his protege. And he's like, all right, yeah, that's totally me.
Yeah, and he does this whole thing. Well, initially he's like, so I'm offering you my work. He's like, or is this blackmail? You'll tell people who I am. And he starts cleaning the big knife he was cutting the chicken with.
It's a great like Tony Soprano moment where it's like, you know what? I'm going to do something real casual that's a threat.
Yep.
But he's like going...
And then he breathes through his nose very heavily like Tony Soprano.
Yeah. And he talks about his shrink. And big pussy. So he's...
Gotta get down to the Bing.
Those they make those good cannolis. Anyway, so he's cleaning that knife, saying, "What's to say that after you learn everything you need from me, you won't just turn me in?" And he's like, "Going, that's not what I would do because I'm in it for the long run. You're the bomb.
I'm all in on mad science, man. Like different than his assistant in the last movie."
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's a nice flipperino. So he goes, great. So let me show you what I've been up to. Let's go to the lab.
Yeah, and they go to the lab, which is underneath another building that it used to be a wine cellar, and now it is his crazy mad scientist lab. And it's very mad scientisty. There's things that whirl. There's beakers of colored liquid.
Well, it's the exact same equipment from the previous movie, which I liked. The
we
spinning
still
wheel
have
thing
this in the closet. Do you want me to wheel it back out?
That would be fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
And he's upgraded. He's got a chimp.
He does. He does indeed have a chimp, which is one of my favorite pieces of trivia that was on the IMDb for this, which is
there's trivia about Otto the chimp.
There is. According to Peter Cushing in his memoirs, the chimpanzee that was used for the film took a great liking to the actor. Every morning before work, he would greet Cushing with a kiss.
Oh, that's absolutely sweet.
Even chimps love Peter Cushing.
Oh my God, that's the best thing. So Otto the chimp is there, as well as Carl, our hunchback friend, who now gets introduced to Cleve and is like, wait a minute, there's a stranger in our lab. And Frankenstein's like, no, he's going to be working with us, and I trust him. And he says, Carl there is also completely trustworthy, and he's helped me out.
He's feeding the chimp right now.
He's feeding the chimp. And he's feeding the chimp meat, which will become important at some point.
We're not to make note of that yet, but we are supposed to
Yeah. So he's like going, all right, well, here's where I've been continuing on my work. And he goes, you know what's in these boxes? A brain. He's like, what? He goes, well, kind of a brain. He goes, here's a hand that's connected.
Is such great mad scientist movie gobbledygook.
It's awesome. He goes, all right, so here's a hand, and the hand can't operate independently. It has nerves, and the nerves, of course, go to the brain, and it has nerve endings, sends information to the brain, and so do the eyes. So he has these tanks. One tank has a severed forearm with a hand floating there, it's connected with wires.
Yep. And then he's got just a pair of eyes.
That's the thing that kills me, man. So, he goes, and then eyes, and there's another tank connected via wires to the other one. It's just these two eyes with the attached optic nerves floating around in the liquid, but the eyes are attached to wires and a thing. So he goes, watch what happens when I
he does this whole thing where he's like, what do you do when you put your hand too close to fire? He's like, well, I pull it back. Yes, because, the nerves in the hand send it to the brain. But the key is we as humans know fire is dangerous, and it's through the eyes we can see it.
The eyes. Yeah, the eyes give that information. So he lights a candle behind his back, then turns around, shows it to those eyes.
Well, he starts moving. He starts moving it towards the hand, and the eyes in the tank turn and are like, "What are you doing with that fire?"
No.
That's my favorite part. Just the eyes going. It's not in front of them, and they're just there. They move. What's moving them?
Well,
the
nerves.
Brain, I guess, is the thing. The wires.
Mechanical brain that he's
but like how are they physically moving? They're not in a head or anything.
They're on the pivot. I are the nerves telling the mechanical pivot to turn?
I guess so. It's just this is all very. I love it because it's total nonsense, and I love it.
Bullshit. But then the hand starts twitching.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, there's a fire nearby.
Fire bad.
This is not great, but I swear to God, audiences at the time were plotting. They were like going, "Holy shit, look at that!"
Selling it, man.
I will say the severed arm, not this one in the tank, which looks very fake.
Yeah.
But the severed arm, when they like with the cross section with the bones sticking out of it that they took off the pickpocket dude.
Yeah.
And he wraps it like it's a ham.
Yeah. He does. Just got this from the butcher.
But it looks pretty darn good. And again, we've got some sloppy, bloody brains being dumped into jars at least 2 or 3 times in this movie. They don't look like brains. They look
don't.
Like
and the way they come apart, like it's like that's bad. The two halves of the brain shouldn't separate that much.
They look organic is the one thing. I would say that I don't know what they use. They look
too small too. They don't look like the size of a brain.
They look flat. So I'm like, I don't know, but still,
there is a satisfying with them, like
and like bloody trails coming off of them in the water, and I'm like going. Again, 1958 audiences are like going, holy.
It's properly ghoulish. Like, it is properly ghoulish, which I love. It is sadistic.
It's sadistic. So then he says, now let me show you the thing I'm working on. I'm really proud of. And he goes, my masterpiece.
He whips back this curtain.
Back a curtain, and there is a standing glass tank, like a magician's cabinet almost. Yeah. And inside of it is a partially mummified, wrapped up, basically to cover the junk and the legs, but a body that's got some stitchery marks, but not a lot. So and it's like, there you go. I made that.
Yeah.
He goes, Cleve's like, what the fuck? You made that, dude?
I put this dude together, fella.
Yeah, he's like going, yeah. And it's great. All it needs now is a brain. He goes, where are you going to get a brain? He goes, well, here's the thing I figured out.
Because
I've learned from my previous mistakes.
love the line when they pull the thing back, and Cleve is like, who is that? And Frankenstein says, he's no one. He isn't born yet.
Yeah, I mean, again, Cushing delivers this stuff.
And then keeps going on about he's perfect.
Gold. It's gold.
Yeah.
But he says the thing he figured out is he has to have a living brain.
That was the mistake I made last time.
I mean, what were we talking about? Just get it in there quicker? Because you're still yanking it out of a body and plopping it.
Well, he does also ask, he says, do you know the story of Frankenstein? And this is an interesting line where he goes, everyone knows the story of Frankenstein. It's a legend at this point.
Yeah. You mean the thing that happened like maybe 5 months ago?
Yeah.
No, I guess at this point it would have been about
for 3 years.
Okay, so maybe it's been a legend for 3 years.
Yeah, it's still a short period of time to become a legend.
But essentially, he's like, okay, here's the thing: is I'm gonna put a living brain in this perfect body that I've made. And he goes, where will you get a living brain? And Frankenstein does kind of smirk and look at him, and goes, oh, that brain is right here in this room. And Cleve's like going, oh,
and he's like, no, not you, my good man.
You idiot.
Oh, I know. I like what he said. He says, your brain is perfectly useful where it is right now. For the moment, or something like he does. Yeah, he's like, but should it come to that, I'm totally taking that brain,
dude, yanking it right out.
Yeah.
But he goes, no, it's Carl right over there, and Carl looks around, like, yeah, totally down.
Hello.
He goes, in exchange for helping me out, and he helped me out of my execution.
Yeah.
Here's the thing I don't get about it. I mean, I do love the way they did that.
Yeah.
But did the priest not go missing? The priest that walked out to the execution where there's apparently only 3 people out there and no one else attended, and no one noticed that the priest didn't leave again.
Oh, he still was in the clothes, because I was gonna. Yeah, it's not like Frankenstein took the priest's clothes and exited dressed as a priest.
They just used a body and I guess probably wrapped it up along with the head and were like, well, it's all done now.
Yeah.
And Frankenstein got to escape, and no one was like, what happened to that priest?
That priest said he had somewhere he had to be.
Yeah, and he might be gone for a long time. Yeah, long time. Anyway, so Carl is he says in
the
exchange
executioner
for that,
didn't go along with these guys further than that, though. He's still just like,
no, he's probably there just like going, I don't know, everything went totally fine, and he's sitting there going, please don't ask me any more questions.
Definitely cut that dude's head off.
I'm a terrible liar.
Mm-hmm.
Please don't ask me any more questions.
I'm a man who pulls a lever for a living.
So Carl is down with this. He wants a new body because his body has been, messed up from birth.
Yeah.
And Cleve says some very enlightened things about, well, geez, man, what all the shit that's wrong with him? Don't you think it's brain damage? And Frankenstein's like, no,
I've
I don't
already
think so.
examined him. It's due to a blood clot, which I can easily fix, upon post-surgery. And he'll be fine. He's actually a pretty smart fellow because he's been listening to me for the last 3 years.
Yeah. And Carl's like, hey, thanks for your condescension, but you're absolutely right.
I love just the never-ending ego on Frankenstein. It rocks. This guy, of course, this guy's smart. He's been next to me for 3 years.
Yeah, it's osmosis.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Luther and that guy Otis. Otis is a genius now.
Oh, gee, Mr. Luther.
Gee, Mr. Luther, have you thought about rerouting the quantum mechanics of the Dr. Hypertube?
Fucking Otis, man.
Fucking Otis. Anyway, so this is the plan: is we're gonna yank Carl's brain, put it in this perfect body.
Yeah, I do like the way that he's just like, the body's perfect.
And it's a tall, lanky, good-looking-ish guy.
Yeah, by British
Flashy
standards.
hair. By British standards. So it's not like a Christopher Lee melted wax,
it could have been
creature.
Christopher Lee, though. I mean, Christopher Lee is a huge dude. Without the makeup, he would have been a pretty perfect specimen,
Yeah, only that would have raised the question, why do they always end up looking like that? Like, vaguely like this guy.
He's just my type.
Just my type. So that is the plan. What happens now?
Oh, we get Margaret arriving at the poor ward or whatever it is.
I want you to tell our listeners who's playing our lovely lead actress.
Yes, this is Margaret, played by the wonderful Eunice Gayson, who does not have much to do in this movie, I do think, but
she really doesn't. She's supposed to be kind and pretty, and she puts her nose into too much stuff.
Yeah. And Eunice Gayson, very charming, regal actress who I instantly recognized as Sylvia Trench from the first 2 Sean Connery Bond films.
That is very worth pointing out. I actually didn't recognize her by sight. It wasn't until I was like, well, who's our leading lady? And looked it up, and I was like, oh, yes. Now, the character name of Sylvia Trench, of course I know Sylvia Trench.
Yeah.
She is the first Bond girl.
She is. She's in the first scene post the assassination in Jamaica in Dr. No, but she's in the introduction of James Bond.
The Baccarat
playing
scene.
Baccarat. Yes, exactly. And she...
Wheat.
Bonk. Bonk.
Wheat.
Yeah. Bonk sweet.
Oh.
Yeah. So she is also the one who prompts the very first ever Bond, James Bond.
Yes. She is Bond's steady.
Yes.
Which is unheard of. And they never return to again.
She's his girl in London. He goes off to his adventures elsewhere and beds women during those missions. But when he comes back to London, this is who he's hooking up with.
Right back to Sylvia Trench. So, yes.
Who is married, by the way, because Bond, canonically, according to the novels, prefers to get it on with married women.
Can I hear a what, gentlemen? But that's I don't want that to be creepy. That's just very Bond. And I will say,
no mess then, right? It's not his problem.
I will say, this movie notwithstanding, if that's all she ever did with her career, but she had a nice long career, if that's all she did, that's historic.
Yeah.
No love interest lasted 2 Bond films
until now, until this very next Bond movie is the first time they've brought back a love interest from a previous movie, aside from Sylvia Trench.
Yeah, our Léa Seydoux playing
Dr. Madeleine Swan.
Madeleine Swan.
This is what I'm here for. Bond questions.
We are not, I must say, Matt Gurley and Matt
Myra.
Matt Myra.
No.
But we do love us some Bond. And John does, I do bow to John's knowledge of Bond as well. I mean, I've got the box set. I watch them at least once a year.
Yeah.
But I've never really deep dived into trivia too much.
Yeah, it is one of my great obsessions, the James Bond franchise, and has been since I was a kid.
Love them.
Yeah, they're
not enough monsters.
Good and bad. That's the thing is with Bond, I love them all. I love the good ones and the bad ones. I take them all.
Only a couple actually are painful to watch because almost all of them, including the bad ones, as you say, they're a delight.
Yeah.
And I can sit there going, that's not good Bond, but that's still a delightful movie.
Yeah, there's just they're like a warm blanket to me. I just can put them on and also I love the Pluto TV on their app, where they have live streaming channels. They have a 007 channel that I will often, when I'm doing other things, just have that on in the background and catch 20 minutes of Live and Let Die or something like that,
I will say Eunice Gayson also, when you look at her IMDb, she has, this is pretty impressive. Right after her From Russia with Love appearance, she ends up on Secret Agent.
Yep.
She ends up on The Saint.
Mm-hmm.
And The Avengers.
Yes.
I just don't know of anyone cross continuity wise. She may be the linchpin of
all British spy things.
Of all British awesomeness.
Yeah. Those are all great shows.
If only she had also been on a Doctor Who.
Yeah.
But, one degree of separation because she's in this movie with, Cushing's Doctor Who is not the canonical Doctor Who because he's not an alien, he's an Earthbound, but he fought the Daleks, and kind of.
Those movies are such an interesting piece of Doctor Who history.
Yeah, there's no way to tie him in unless you just go, that's just an alternate universe.
Yeah, that's exactly how it is. But also the fact that because she was on The Saint, she shared the screen with two Bonds then.
Yep.
So
I love me some Roger Moore's Saint.
Oh, great. Love that. They added that on Amazon Prime sometime last year, and I was thrilled to see Roger Moore's Simon Templar.
Man, I hope the new take on it's good. The Kilmer movie wasn't great.
It's got its moments, but yeah.
They never really get that character right. Again,
well, he's going to be handsome as hell because he's Chris Pine.
Read the novels.
Yeah. Now he's going to be Chris Pine, so he'll be handsome and charming.
And apparently not British.
No.
Come on.
No. Chris Pine is about as American as it gets.
But he needs to be British. Oh, I'm okay.
I would rather... Well, Kilmer wasn't British.
No, I know, and that was one of my big problems with that movie.
Yeah.
All
anyway,
right.
Eunice Gayson doesn't have a lot to do here, but she is very pretty and regal.
Well, here's her thing. In this movie, she is one of the upper crust, but she has a big heart and wants to give back to society.
She's the bleeding heart liberal of upper crust. Was Carlsbrook.
Yes, she's volunteering her time as being just a nice lady at the poor hospital.
She shops for them, is what she says her job is.
Yes.
She will go out and buy them paper or tobacco or soap.
They do get in a good dig here, and it's one of the many references to the smelly poor.
Yeah.
Is it Frankenstein or is it Cleve who goes, so what you're getting for these people is
Cleve. Yeah.
Is like, do you think they're going to want to write anything down? And do you think they're going to use soap?
Yeah.
And it is true that the only thing anyone takes out of her basket when she walks around going, what would you like? They all take the tobacco.
Yeah.
That's just.
I love that this is, by the way, the only three things she buys for them. Like,
I know.
Wouldn't food maybe be something of interest to them?
Not when you've got paper and soap and tobacco.
Yeah. Oh, I do just love, because Cleve is basically just like, have you seen these fucking animals in there?
That's pretty much it. And you have Up Patient. I can't believe we have to call him that.
What? As I was writing my notes, so many times I have Up Patient. How does this guy not have a name?
When we say that, it's because this isn't a character that is just a cameo. This character becomes sort of a linchpin.
He's a supporting character.
He ties things together. What he is he's clearly one of the poor guys, but he's been put to work in the hospital because he's not that bad off. So he sweeps up. And he's up. He's an up patient. And he pays attention to what Frankenstein and Cleve when they run off somewhere. And he's a nosy guy, and he's always trying to work stuff to his advantage. He's a terrible character. This actor, I hated. I'm so sorry to say it, but he's doing this sort of broad.
No, he sucks so much.
Broad stage version of. He reminds me of the guy from the British Office who played David Brent's old salesman partner,
Finchy.
who would come around, and the whole idea is
And
it's someone that's even worse than David Brent,
Yeah.
and you're like going, oh, that guy is intolerable.
An unrepentant monster, Chris Finch is. Like,
this guy not only reminds me of the character, but he also physically kind of looks like the same actor
a guy
decades
who's
earlier.
in a million things and usually plays a scumbag of some sort.
He's done a lot of
He's
other
been in Game of
stuff,
Thrones and the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. He's in Ready Player One as the main character's totally abusive scumbag uncle.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, because once again, there's just something about him that's like, I don't know about this guy.
So this guy, tall, lanky, but he's doing like a staged Dickens performance of like, I'm one of these roguish types. I just came off the road
This
company
guy is
of
the ultimate. When I was talking about Dickens earlier, this guy feels so Dickens.
And he has these stage mannerisms that don't look natural at all. He does this thing where he rubs his nose. He's like, well, and he does it like a million times. You're like, we get it. You've decided that's your character tick.
No,
okay?
and that's it exactly. It reminds me of when I was in college taking acting classes, and they were like, you need a tick as a character. Every character needs a tick. And I'm like, no, they don't. If one fits, great.
If one fits, and if it's naturalistic.
Yeah.
In this case, it's like that's his punctuation marks. So his whole character just walks around watching people, trying to get away with stuff, and constantly kind of hitting on this nice lady, but not quite. But basically just like going, hello, miss. Oh, well, the doctors are they're up to some things. And I'm like, I hate this guy. I hate you, outpatient.
And he's in the movie so much. It can't. He's important to the plot, and he's he's poorly written and poorly acted.
I don't understand why that janitor character who does something very important later isn't just this character, or vice versa. Like, make this character all one. It's either just going to be the janitor because it would fit.
Yeah.
Because the janitor comes out of nowhere and does this major thing later that you're like, well, why are you important now? Because we have had no dialogue from you whatsoever, so we don't know why you're such a psycho fucker.
By the way, we will see this guy again, the guy who plays Outpatient. Richard Wordsworth will reappear in Curse of the Werewolf.
Yeah.
If
you'd also stayed through the end of the credits, it does say Outpatient will return.
Well, in that he plays obviously a much more defined character of the beggar.
Oh, perfect. and probably the beggar, it seems that no one cares about, but the beggar is probably the most important character in Curse of the Werewolf.
He's the one who kills the werewolf at the end, don't you remember?
I don't know where I found this silver bullet. Might as well put it to work.
Somebody put this silver bullet in my cap when I was out begging.
And I do see that in 1957, basically right before he made this movie, he was in the TV series of Nicholas Nickleby.
Yep.
Playing Newman Noggs.
Yeah.
I bet he was the best Newman Noggs ever.
I do kind of want to see the movie he made the same year, though, called The Camp on Blood Island.
That's a Hammer film, and it's bonkers.
Everything about it seems it, and I love the poster, and I am going to watch this movie.
It's bonkers and very un-PC.
Oh, yeah. Hammer war movies are their own crazy thing.
They are.
Yeah.
They're going to show you the stuff that other studios didn't have the guts to show you.
Because the thing is, obviously we're a monster podcast, so we focus on the Hammer monster movies, but Hammer made a bunch of other genres of movies. They're like psycho thrillers, they're war movies. It's
Yellow Peril movies.
Yeah.
A lot of Yellow Peril, including straight up Fu Manchu.
Yep. So there's a lot of interesting, weird pockets of the Hammer history that people can check out. But obviously the horror movies are the best remembered ones, and rightfully so, really.
Yeah. Amen, brother. Getting back to this, so we're introduced to him, and
so Carl walks in and sees. I keep wanting to call her Sylvia Margaret. I keep wanting to call her Sylvia Trench. And he's just like, hello there.
This is that trope coming back. But I will say this guy who plays Carl in both versions, actually, both actors who play Carl, they're good. And so, in other words, it is the trope of the poor, damaged.
Yeah, this one is Oscar Kwiatek, Great name, by the way, Oscar Quetelet.
Yeah, exactly. And he had a nice career. I checked his IMDb out too. So in other words, he is sympathetic, but he has fallen for the nice lady who is very solicitous toward him and like, oh, hi, Carl, I'm Margaret, and it's nice to meet you. And oh, you work for the doctor. Oh, that's wonderful. Da da da. So he's like, she's so pretty and nice. And when I have my new body, I'm totally gonna get in there.
Yeah, and she is
not appropriate.
A completely nice character throughout the movie. She's an unironic, just a nice woman who wants to do nice things. She's pure innocence.
She is,
except for when she's shagging Sean Connery. If only Connery had ever been in one of these.
That would just be the best.
Yeah. Oh,
no. In genre much, unless you count Darby O'Gill and the Little People.
Well, or sadly, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Oh man, I can't.
That's it. Oh yeah, and he was the dragon.
On paper, the idea of him playing
Alan Quartermain.
Alan Moore's version of Alan Quartermain.
I remember when he was cast, and I thought that is perfect. This movie's gonna rule.
Because the whole idea of Moore's take on the character is this is past his adventures when he is old. He's strung out on the drugs he was taking in the jungles, and he's not the hero you thought of. What a great thing for one of our iconic heroes to play the broken old version, because he did that with Robin Hood and Robin and Marion to some degree. Yeah, being a middle-aged, very human version of Robin Hood, great.
Yeah,
but unfortunately, the movie they built around him playing this version of Alan Quartermain, that's not we get this badass elderly Alan Quartermain from The Drop who's sad that his son died, and that's basically it. And then the movie is also just shit.
Yeah.
Also, the movie shit.
The movie is so bad. I can't and I love that comic so much. And
Me too.
And I was so excited about the movie because obviously I'm a huge Connery fan and the fan of that comic, and I just thought this is going to be and then, well, I think about the time they said they were introducing Secret Agent Tom Sawyer into it in the pre-release material, I was like, I don't think I need to go see this in the theater.
Right around that time, I mean, I knew that they couldn't use the Chinese doctor because even Alan Moore could not call him Fu Manchu because of legal problems. He had to be the Chinese doctor. So I knew they were not going to have Fu Manchu as the main villain. Sad. And I'm like, they're creating a character called the Phantom who's going to be I'm like, okay, that's shaky ground. But then, Secret Agent Tom Sawyer, I'm like, well, great. Is he going to be 50? Because if you're doing the timeline from the actual book that Mark Twain wrote, and you're putting this in 1880s, 1890s, Tom Sawyer is going to be in his 50s. He will not be this charming young man who becomes a surrogate son to Alan Quartermain. Just do some reading. Read the goddamn source material, and you'll know. Oh, I'm angry now.
I was gonna
Why
say,
did you start?
And that completes John and Brendan's comics rant.
I hate things adapted poorly.
That one, and normally I'm pretty forgiving of a lot of comic book movies, but that one has no redeeming qualities almost.
No.
It is horrible. Anyway.
Yep. Okay.
So he gets all awkward, Carl, and he won't shake her hand because he's got a bum arm, and he's like, I'm gonna leave, and he leaves. And so then Cleve goes to talk to Frankenstein. He's like, what? I almost thought of Pinky in the Brain. What are we doing tonight, Frankenstein? And he says, tonight we give Carl his new body.
What I thought was really funny. I mean, they move this movie along, and I thought,
ooh, good. We're about 25 minutes in this movie. We're getting to the body swapping. I love it.
But it does seem weird that he'd be springing that on Cleve. I mean, this seems to be one of these.
Prepare nothing, my assistant.
It's like one of my life's greatest, this is one of the culminations. But you know what? I'm just feeling it tonight.
Yeah.
Tonight we're going to do it. And
I gave are right. Am I right, Cleve?
Gave you no notice.
Yeah.
And I don't care if you're ready or not, because we're putting the brain in that body tonight.
Mm-hmm. Those brains are going swip and swap everywhere they go.
They do.
Yeah. I'm putting this brain over here. I'm putting that brain over there.
Swippy swap, though, because the perfect body has no brain in it. There's no swippy swap. It's just putting the brain of Carl into that perfect. goddamn beautiful body.
I do just want a scene of Cushing like going, staring over it like, oh, I nailed it on this one.
You know, Cleve, give me a moment. That's creepy. And then it becomes a whole Rocky Horror Picture Show thing again, where he oils them up and he sings a whole song about in just 7 days I can make you a man.
Oh, the great Tim Curry.
It doesn't happen, but they do get Carl's brain into that perfect body.
They do. They put Carl out. I love the old timey anesthesia with the cloth on his face, and they're dripping it on there. That's great. I love that anytime the surgeries in these movies are performed, the assistant's wearing like a white lab coat, and Frankenstein's wearing like a beautifully designed coat.
Yeah.
He's ever looked stylish. Cushing looks amazing in these movies, and something we've touched on a little bit, but the costuming in these movies is always top notch. Love the costume design.
It just, again, for a little studio that, you know, they didn't have the budgets.
They didn't. I think the thing that they have a lot of help with costume wise is there's a lot of shit in this time period being shot around England, and they can probably find these clothes pretty easily.
I will say that a lot of British entertainment, even now, I mean, it became such a standard with, you know, Masterpiece Theater and the BBC. You're like, well, they're always doing Regency dramas, and they're always doing. So in other words, they're always doing things from the 19th century. So and of course, plenty of Dickens adaptations.
Yeah.
You turn left somewhere in London, you're going to bump into a warehouse that's full of these ruffled shirts and velvet.
I've seen so many British actors talk about this, that there is no working British actor who doesn't have some like BBC adaptation of some piece of classic literature from the 1800s on their resume. You've done a Dickens, you've done a Jane Austen, you've done a Henry James, you've done something, you know. Everybody's got, you just have to. It's part of the, you know, you've done some kind of upstairs downstairs thing. And I fucking hate that stuff. I find it so boring. I've never liked any of it.
On the one, I've seen some amazing Jane Austen adaptations,
I've also I can tolerate the most of Jane Austen because there's like wit to it. It's, you know, sort of just a romantic comedy in that time period. It's the more serious stuff that I'm like, hey.
Dickens can either be great or it can be terrible depending on the adaptation.
Yeah.
But it is true. Some of it is just I didn't finish reading The Mayor of Casterbridge in high school, and I don't want to see a 5-hour adaptation of The Mayor of Casterbridge. It's like, thanks.
And they just keep doing them. Wait a couple years and there'll be another one. It feels like I feel like they've made Little Women like 18 times in the last 10 years.
Well, you know, Lisa May Alcott, she's ours.
She is ours, but I'm just saying like classic. But BBC has adapted it plenty enough.
Yeah, of course. It's just, and that's another thing is they cycle through.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh, for a long time wasn't Colin Firth's Jane Eyre the thing that launched him?
Oh, it's Pride and Prejudice.
Or was it Pride and Prejudice, right?
Which is good. That one's good. I like that version of it.
It is good, and it was recognized as being like, there it is.
Yeah.
That's the one. It's a 90s BBC production. We don't need any more.
It's
or
the
late
one
80s.
I checked out from the library in high school, so I didn't have to read the book.
And then we got another, you know, film adaptation. We've had another one.
Yeah.
I liked the Keira Knightley one, but it's like, guys,
beautifully shot. Yeah.
No, and she's Keira Knightley, so
she's very charming.
She worked for me.
I didn't like that tone. She worked for me.
Well, no, by that I mean I executive produced the film.
Yeah, she used to be my employee.
I signed the checks.
Yeah. I was not interested in her in any kind of physical sense at all.
I just think that you know, like you said, it's like enough may be enough.
Yeah. Speaking of Nicholas Nickleby mentioned earlier, how many times have they done fucking Nicholas Nickleby?
1,000,000 times, and they even did the full 9-hour award-winning stage production. They even turned that into like a video thing that they aired on TV, and I remember watching as much of that as I could. I was like, seriously, people went to see a 9-hour theater production with like a huge intermission in the middle. I'm like, oh.
I can't imagine. I can't even imagine what would get me into it. It would have to be about Batman, really. That's the only way they're going to get me to sit there for 9 hours.
I saw a 5.5-hour film once that had a long intermission, and that's the most. That was The Kingdom. Lars von Trier's The Kingdom, which was a TV minute.
Right, yeah.
Edited into a feature release. And actually,
that's watchable.
I didn't feel. Yeah, I didn't feel.
Not in a theater, but, you know, and that's designed to be binged in chapters, right? I mean, it's a little bit more. Anyway,
I've never done one of those marathon watches of the extended Lord of the Rings cuts where that's another 9.5 hour. I haven't done that. I've watched each one individually, but no, I'm not going to do.
But to be fair, Lord of the Rings, that's not really my jam to begin. Oh yeah, it's fine. I like it.
Oh, John, we just turn off the mics.
I like it just fine. They're good.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway,
that's not the they were looking for. They're not going to put on the Blu-ray box. Oh, they're good.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
With your name.
I have them. In fact, I bought them again because he just restored them in 4K. So I did buy them again, and I will watch them again. Yeah. But I did not buy the Hobbit series.
The camera cuts you right there at the shoulder, so I couldn't see that you were wearing fancy pants.
Yep, the fancy. You can see them glimmering up though from the.
Yeah, I was wondering what that underlighting was. Anyway, so Carl now has a new brain, or
so they
he's
put
in
the
a new
brain in pretty easy. That's what I thought. I was like, because this is one of the ones I didn't really remember that well. So I'm watching it going, where is this going? Because this is all pretty simple.
Yeah, it's not about a damaged brain this time or wrong.
He seems to have actually done it this time. It does seem like, he really has figured out the errors.
Learning, and he's getting better at it. And this time, he actually slotted a 16-pin brain into a 16-pin skull. I think it's going to work just fine.
Yeah, by George, he's got it.
Now, there is an intrinsic flaw, which they explain a little bit. But anyway, at least right now, everything's looking real good.
Then he starts pumping Carl's old body full of embalming fluid. He's like, we're just going to keep that sucker around. Mm-hmm. And I love during this experiment, all the cutaways to the chimp just like banging on his cage and stuff. And I just wrote down, Chimp is loving this experiment. He's like, oh, yeah. Switch those brains. Yeah.
Doing the dramatic music. And they've got the equipment going, and I fucking love getting that Frankenstein equipment. Gets me
as soon as you get
the clackety and the bubbling fluid. That's what I want.
Love it.
And cuts to a chimp going, yeah, woo!
Science. Yeah. I love it. Weird choice to get Bobcat Goldthwait to voice that chimp.
It's very prescient.
So they fire up the equipment now because they've got the brain in, but they gotta jumpstart this body now. And this body comes alive and it just starts wrecking shit right away. It is confused and angry, and they have got to get it under control. And they do pretty easily.
Yeah, they do.
And then they're like, "Oh, good." And so they've got the body sedated now, and they're like, "Well, everything's looking good. All the vitals are looking good. I think this is pretty good." And once again, now the chimp is really freaking out, and they're like, "You think it's his feeding time?" And Frankenstein's just like, "Oh yeah, Carl used to feed the monkey.
Carl used to feed him, so maybe you should do it. All right."
An ape, by the way, they keep calling it a monkey. He's an ape.
Oh, sorry.
No, the movie is the movie's fault, and but just I've seen enough Planet of the Apes movies.
Are apes? You're absolutely right, and I apologize to the ape community.
Mm-hmm. And so he's like, he starts explaining. He's like, "Wow, this is amazing. How'd you come up with it? You put a brain somewhere else?" And he goes, "Well," or because he's like, "Why do you even have this chimp?" He's like, "Well, I couldn't just start by putting a brain in another person. That doesn't really work. So you see, what I did was."
I did do that.
I just did it. It was no problem. But anyway, I had to work my way up to it. And so the first thing I did was I put a frog's brain in a lizard's body. And wouldn't you know it, that lizard tried to jump and it didn't work. And it's like, then I put an orangutan.
That shit was cray.
That shit was cray, believe me. Cray AF.
Which was your rapper name, wasn't it, John?
Cray AF. Yeah, that was my. It was back when I was rap battling people.
You were up against MF Doom, R.I.P.
He was a close friend.
I know.
They and then he goes, "Oh yeah," and I put an orangutan's brain in this chimp's body. I just want to see what would happen, and I don't really know what that accomplished.
Well, that's the whole thing. He goes, "Wait, so I'm feeding meat to this chimpanzee. I believed that they were vegetarians, and he goes,
that hasn't happened yet.
Oh, that hasn't happened yet?
No.
Oh, well, they dropped that hint at some point. He says
it's an orangutan's body, but that's not what makes him eat meat. It's that it was a damaged brain and he became a cannibal.
Oh, yes. He says he ate his mate.
Yeah. Yeah. Ate his wife. I had a ceremony for them.
Have you seen the pictures? They're adorable. Look at this. This is her feeding him cake. This is him picking bugs out of her fur.
Yes, Cleve, I'm a lonely, lonely man.
And I made a calendar. Just each month is them in different costumes.
That's really cute of the idea of Cushing just making calendars. And now get closer, you two. Come on, squeeze in.
No, don't take off your Romeo outfit. You have to be Romeo and Juliet. Now kiss.
Yeah.
Kiss for the camera. This is going to be February because that's Valentine's month.
I have no Valentine.
Chimpanzee calendar.
It is interesting that it takes him 4 movies to make a woman, because it does just seem like I don't know. Wouldn't that be the ultimate for him?
He's working his way up.
Yeah. I haven't perfected it yet for the ladies.
But so yes, that's the whole thing, is that something about putting the orangutan brain into Otto, the chimpanzee. He's totally fine, except for the fact that apparently he turned kind of cannibal and likes meat now instead of being a vegetarian.
Yeah.
So that is an indication that, hey, sometimes when you move brains over, it does alter them.
But all of that is not revealed till later.
Really, not here?
No,
I'm getting it all
because it involves Up Patient is the one who leads Cleve to figure this out, believe it or not.
Okay. Yes.
So they then, in the dead of night, they move Carl's new body to the poor hospital, to the attic of it. But wouldn't you know it, Up Patient sneaking around going, hey, what's going on?
Here's the thing. Up Patient, I don't quite know where the origin of his suspicions lay, because he's in a hospital.
Yeah.
And he sees 2 doctors wheeling a patient into a room. Yeah, they lock the door, but I mean, still, there's nothing intrinsically like,
they're actually not doing
that?
Anything suspicious.
Nothing suspicious. There is a scream that he hears, but again, you're in a hospital.
Yeah, and so then he's like, "What's going on?"
The patient's like going, "Oh, what is this? Hello?" And then he does a few more of his characteristic sniffs. The scream
he did come from the James Gandolfini School of Acting. It's all about nose breathing.
Yeah. The scream is Carl waking up in the new body. He's in pain. Yeah. He hasn't said any words yet. No. But basically Franklin's like, nothing to worry about. I mean, it's going to take some time, some healing.
Have to shackle him to this bed.
Shackle him down.
He's gonna get it. And I love the way throughout the whole movie, the way Cushing's just like, Carl, hey, Carl, it's me, all right? Just be cool. Are you in there, Carl? I think this is when he's like, are you in there, Carl? Did this work?
And he's like, everything went fine. Yeah. And he goes, and before you know it, you're going to just be awesome.
Yeah. You're in if I do say so myself, perfect body.
Yeah. Don't worry. The Johnson works.
Yeah.
Oh, I must be on my way.
And believe me, we ran lots of tests.
So he sort of leaves Cleveland and is like, well, that was great.
Yeah,
I'm off.
By the way, apparently a functioning penis is no big thing. That's not he's got that down. He's figured that out.
Not a thing.
You just hook it up. It's just plumbing. So yeah, then the creature is awake, and Victor comes in and he's examining the creature. He looks at his eyes. He's like, good, yes. And he's like, all right, unshackle that arm. Give me an arm lift. And he lifts the left arm. A little bit slower on the right arm, but he does eventually lift it. He's like, yes, coming along, Carl. You're doing great. You're doing great, buddy.
That's also our first indication, because the right arm was when he had the problem with in the you're like, So maybe there's something mentally.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like he's crippled in the brain?
Or something like if you have lived your entire life with some sort of thing you've compensated for, maybe it's almost like biofeedback.
I have a valid comic book connection here.
Oh.
I'll drop a comic book reference, but I don't want to derail us too much. But it's
I
like
don't like invalid comic book connections.
it's like Dark Knight Returns when they fix Harvey Dent's face, and yet when he looks in the mirror, he still sees the monster.
Yeah, it's a psychological issue.
Yeah, it's just like, I will always be Two-Face no matter what you do to my face.
So in this movie, it would appear that psychological issue then actually causes the new body to transform, though we don't see that for a long time. It happens over time.
Completely insane, but also awesome for a horror movie.
Yeah, it's crazy gobbledygook, which is what I signed on for.
I want more gobbledygook. I love these movies. Unlike a lot of the Universal movies, the gobbledygook here is so good.
Mm-hmm.
Like
this is great gobbledygook.
We're having this movie's so much fun. Like I had a blast watching this movie. So yeah, then Carl kind of comes to, and he's like, Hans, is that you? And suddenly he's recognizing him. He's Carl. He's talking, and he's like, when can I see my new body? Because
that's a weird
I want to see what I'm working with here.
Yeah. What's weird is he spent plenty of time looking at that thing in the lab.
Well, in fact, before the surgery, Frankenstein goes, hey, take a real good look at it, because that's going to be you.
And he does, like, when he's doing this, it's typical is he's looking at his hands, but he just wants, like, get me the full body mirror.
Yeah.
And also another mirror for behind, because I got to check out that ass.
Yeah.
I got to see what I'm working with.
I like the idea of him looking at that and going like, it's pretty good, but Frankenstein did skimp a little on the ass.
So from here on out, we should say Carl is now being played by Michael Gwynn. This is the guy who
he's so good in this.
He really is. And I read a little in the book about the making of this film. That the thing is, he was a stage actor who several times was courted for films, and he would do films occasionally. If you look at his IMDb, obviously he's got credits, but he was like, everyone said, you're really great, you could have a major film career. And he's like, he only did movies or TV shows when he kind of felt like it, and was totally satisfied just staying on the stage.
And he did some great stuff.
He did. He's in Village of the Damned.
Yeah, great. I know. That's the one that jumped out to me from. He's in Jason the Argonauts.
Yep. Yeah.
And he's in an episode of Fawlty Towers.
Yes, he is. And Thriller, the Boris Karloff.
I love Thriller. Series. I love Thriller.
So, I mean, it's not like he doesn't have credits. He does. But apparently he was one of those guys that could take or leave that kind of stardom. He's very good here about first being Carl and then being helplessly losing sense of self. And so he's a very different monster.
Unlike Christopher Lee, there's so much to play here. This is a juicy part.
Yeah, when he first wakes up and they make the point of it, they're like going, look, you've got that scar across your forehead, but that will fade in time. And you've got this new body and you're a handsome dude. And he's like, all right. He's like, now the party starts.
Yeah, now it's time to go out and live it up. And he says this though. He's like, what are your plans for me? And he's like, which, by the way, maybe a question to ask before the brain change.
Yeah,
he was just so excited about the new body, he never bothered to ask what happens after that.
I will say that Cleve, who has so far been a fairly intelligent guy and, a good assistant to Frankenstein, he just makes the dumbest, like, he's totally honest. And yet it's just, you don't tell someone who just woke up in this body,
he's like,
well, we're going to show you off to as many people as we can, the world, the press, other scientists. Oh, and we kept your old body, the one that was all fucked up. Mm-hmm. We kept it, and we're going to show that off too with you, like you're some kind of freak.
We're gonna put that up and go like, look at how fucking ugly he used to be. Look at him now.
It's essentially
we did that.
He's like going, so yeah. We kept all the leftovers, and we're totally going to turn you into a circus freak.
We really want that before and after effect. And yeah, he's like, scientists and students and doctors from all around, they're going to come. And he's like, so people will still just stare at me? Like, that's been my whole life. And he's like, yeah, but it'll be good.
Oh, this
It'll
guy.
be good. They'll have to look at your junk.
Heartbreaking.
It's going to be a thing.
They're going to look at your junk. It's going to be a thing.
You just have to, like, accept that. Just, you'll get used to it. They will. They're gonna have to inspect the equipment.
Listen, man, don't worry about it. We'll get you some entrance music. You'll come out. It'll be a big thing. We'll get the lights all set up.
Y'all ready for this?
Well, you'll have a synced up moment where you drop the robe and everyone just goes, oh, don't worry, it's going to be awesome.
Oh, it's going to be great. But you know that Frankenstein would hog the spotlight on that presentation like nobody's business. Of course.
Yeah.
He's going to soak up those applause.
Look what I did.
Yeah.
Look what I did. Look upon my works.
I have made man. I mean, this is... Can we talk about, though, that even without the brain, him just building that human body is a crazy achievement in science?
Absolutely. That's why I'm saying,
he could have just left it there and brought a bunch of people in.
We know that his genius is real, and we know, but we also know this man is a horrible monster. At the same time, during this part of the movie where the experiment has been a success, all I can sit there is going, like, it's like, well, maybe under the right circumstances, Frankenstein should be allowed to continue his work because he's on to something and he seems to be working it out.
He was
it's getting better.
Part of a university or institution of some sort where he could be reined in and have certain ethical boundaries. He could really do some good.
Yes.
But instead, he's a full-on psycho who's in it mostly for his own glory. Like, he doesn't really care about what it can do for medical science as much as he cares about being recognized as the greatest scientific mind.
He is Lex Luthor.
Yeah. I mean, this Frankenstein is very much Lex Luthor Frankenstein.
Yeah, he could solve all the Earth's problems, but he's too absorbed with someone who's getting more press than he is. I have to destroy that super powerful alien. Yeah, I could cure cancer. Yeah, I could solve the ecology problem, but you know what?
By the way, Peter Cushing versus Superman. Come on, there's a movie you want to see.
It's what I want to see right now.
Yep.
In fact, I'm going to hang up and start writing
I see Cushing maybe being more of a brainiac than Lex Luthor on paper, but...
Yeah, I could see that.
He'd be great. Oh.
The thing about this, because as I'm watching this too, I was thinking, well, what if it had gone a different way? What if Cushing had been Hammer's Dracula? I'm not trying to say Christopher Lee would end up being Van Helsing, but let's say Christopher Lee isn't in the picture. It'd
be a woefully bad match for Dracula there. Van Helsing come in.
He's a great actor, but I think physically, again, his features are commanding.
Yeah.
And of course, the gauntness totally worked for Dracula.
Yeah.
But it is interesting, as I was thinking about it, it's like the thing that Cushing does so very well, it is the cold intelligence.
Yeah.
And I do like some of that with Dracula. I like when he is a, world beater supervillain.
Oh, yeah.
But there also has to be a ferocity and a sexuality to Dracula that Cushing couldn't have brought. So It's like, okay. I mean, I'm not saying down with Christopher Lee. I was just thinking about it as an exercise that guy can do anything. Why couldn't he have played Dracula?
He could have played Dracula, and he would have been probably all right. But I think, there would have been. He wouldn't have been an amazing Dracula. He would have been good. The other thing I like about it is he's got a villainous role and he's got a heroic role at Hammer.
Yeah.
And he goes
gets
back
to
and
switch
forth.
off.
Yeah, which is great. And how exciting that must have been for him. Like, ooh, this month I'm evil, and next month I'm the hero of the movie.
Yeah, it must have been fun for him to bounce between the two different poles.
Yeah.
Because Van Helsing never gets like the vain moments.
It's all for the greater good. It's you have to listen to me because I'm trying to save your life.
He has this mission. He has an almost holy mission. And he's a selfless guy who's going to throw himself directly, physically on top of an undead vampiric count. It's a whole different thing.
Rules, man. Hammer Van Helsing is just so awesome.
Because Book Van Helsing is the guy. Book Van Helsing is your dude, and I do love Cushing's Hammer Van Helsing. He is the strapping, heroic, younger Van Helsing.
Action hero Van Helsing, yeah.
Whereas I do love sage, old Van Helsing with the delightful Dutch weird way of talking
I will
that he
say
has in the novel.
it is interesting. Cushing is my favorite Van Helsing, but pretty close to that is Hopkins. I really fucking love Hopkins taking it.
The whole thing with Bram Stoker's Dracula by Coppola, and someday we'll maybe do that on the podcast.
Yeah.
It's the closest we've gotten to the book. There are things that I'm like, oh no, why'd you make that choice? Because it gets so close to being the perfect adaptation that when it goes awry, it makes me crazy because we'll never get the definitive. We've never gotten the definitive.
I love that movie though. I just love that movie. It's so insane.
I love a lot of that movie.
And I just love that he used to. I love any time a great filmmaker uses studio money to make something so aggressively weird. That's just one of my favorite things.
Yeah, sometimes Coppola is almost like just thumbing his nose and going, thanks for the check.
But the thing that was great about that was that movie was hugely successful.
It actually was.
Yeah. People were into that.
And got them thinking like, oh, you know what? We can do that with all those classic monsters. And we'll be the guys who do the definitive versions. Bring on Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Yeah, that one didn't work. And it should have. Branagh was a good choice. Just
De Niro was not.
That's the problem. That's not
the only problem. It's also a weird take on the material.
That's a key problem, though. Let's say that. It would be a far more enjoyable movie had that been a different actor.
Yeah. I'm sorry, and I love De Niro, but good Lord, this
is just coming off my head. Give me like Ben Cross.
You know what? And Ben Cross, you're being very generous to him. Not that he's bad, but why not just go to the guy who was in The Bride and the only good thing in it? Go to Clancy Brown.
Oh, yeah.
Go to Clancy Brown.
Yeah.
And who, even years after The Bride, is still a lumbering giant.
Yeah.
Can be soulful and
Clancy Brown is great.
He was the only good thing in that movie.
I still have never seen The Bride. That is something that is, when we get to the 80s, we will probably cover.
Well, the creature's mainly a cameo that pops up throughout the movie. It's not his story. Right. But all the parts of the movie that work are whenever we're with him. Yeah. And then we get back to Sting's Frankenstein and Jennifer Beals' Bride.
Look,
and you're like,
Sting's a great musician. His acting career,
I don't know, man.
I love how insane he is in Dune, but like
I love him in winged Speedos in Dune.
Like he's going for it in Dune. I guess he's good in what's he in? Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. The guy Richard.
I don't know.
I think he is in that, and he's pretty good in that. But he's like the gang boss, and you see him very little.
I think he's not the actor that David Bowie was. There's some musicians that actually can step in and become very good actors.
Yeah.
Some do it as a hobby, and I think Sting did it as a hobby, and he's fine.
Yeah.
I don't think he ever stank up the screen in anything he was in.
No.
It's just that you're like, no, I would not rest an entire movie on his back. That he's not that guy.
No.
But he can be a good screen presence.
Yeah. Like I said, I do actually like him in Dune, and I think that performance is nuts.
And he taught me everything I need to know about tantric yoga. So let's just move on.
It's something you base most of your life around, from what I gather.
Yeah, exactly.
So Margaret is at the poor ward, handing out her aforementioned soap, paper, and tobacco. She's got a basket. She's like, well, what would you like? Soap, paper, or tobacco?
She tries this on Up Patient.
Yeah.
God damn, I wish he had a name.
He's in the movie way too much to not have a name.
And we don't like him, but she does this on him, and this is where he says the whole thing about, oh, no, I never use soap. And she kind of is a look of like, I know.
Yeah, I know I'm standing over here.
And
I love to stink.
And he does. Is this where he says the whole thing about the animals in the jungle don't need it? Or
he mentions it a little bit, but he goes into the full monologue later because it's with Dr. Cleve, because it's what sets Dr. Cleve off to figure out something's wrong with the chimpanzee.
Right, exactly.
So Up Patient's like, well, I'll just take a whole bunch of tobacco, and she's talking about how great it is that Frankenstein or Dr. Stein, as they call him, as that he does all this stuff, and he goes, oh, it's not so great actually. Don't you know he cuts into people while they're still conscious? That's right. He's got a whole secret patient upstairs, and I'll show you how great he is. And he's like, and better than that, I know where the key to that place is because I just run around this place for some reason.
This is where it would have made perfect sense for him to actually be maybe the janitor character. But, but also this is just for the script. Why this character would make these big leaps after what he saw. And then I was saying he cuts into people when they're still alive. Like what? Well, he's a surgeon and it's 1860. And I'm sure that like you said before, nothing is suspicious.
Nothing.
So why is he like going, I figured out his little secret.
Yeah.
He's a doctor.
Yeah. He didn't...
Listen, there's something you don't know about him. He does surgeries.
Despite the fact they call him a surgeon in so many scenes and talk about him going into surgery.
Knives.
Yeah. But did you know he used knives? Oh, you did? Oh.
Well, sometimes the people will scream.
Because
they're in pain.
Yeah. But isn't he trying to solve the pain? Well, I suppose that's a way to read it, maybe. But, yeah.
That's one way of looking at it, sure, yeah.
This is when he turns into a Monty Python character.
He started out one. And
I
just
suppose. Yeah, he is.
Not a funny one.
If only this was Eric Idle playing this part.
This would be so much enhanced.
Oh, I would have loved Monty Python to have done a Frankenstein movie.
Oh God, what a missed opportunity!
I know. Why didn't they did the medieval movie. They did the biblical epic. What if they had done like a horror movie, a monster movie? That would have been
that's a missed opportunity.
Oh God, yeah.
All right,
now that's all I can think of is like Cleves.
Now that's all I can think of. Oh well. Right, moving on.
So, up patient's like, follow me, I'll show you to the evil he's up to. And it is just like, this is the wrong movie to be like, look at the evil he's up to, because it doesn't look that, what he's doing in this movie is truly more reckless than actively evil this time.
Yeah.
It's dangerous and it's crazy that he's doing it, but he's not really pure evil here like he was in the last movie, and like I know he will be in later movies.
Here, like you said, it's reckless. Yeah. One of the worst things you could do is, I'll just keep doing the thing that got me in trouble, and I'll do it somewhere else.
I'll just get it right this time. Yeah,
I'll get it right this time.
No. I know what I did wrong last time. Now I got it.
Then they'll apologize to me for almost beheading me.
Yeah.
I made an innocent priest.
Oh, he would have relished being like that. For it is I, Frankenstein, who did it. That's right.
I don't know. He doesn't take it so well when that is sprung on him in public.
Well, I know, but I'm saying he would have done that once he'd been commended for it. And he's like, and you were all wrong about me. Crazy, you called me. It would be one of those, right? Who's crazy now? So he takes her up to see. He takes her up to see the patient, the special patient, he calls it. And she sees him. And then he's like, oh, I know you. And she's like, how? We've just met. I saw you once.
Yeah, he's like, oh, shit, I got to keep this on the DL. She can't know that I'm that weird, withered dude. Though I'm going to say that my name is Carl, just like the other guy. But Carl's a common name.
And so he's just like, I'll just leave you two here to get acquainted. And then Patient runs down to Cleves' office, and he's like, yeah, I told the lady about your special patient. And he's like, what are you talking about?
He is just a walking plot device. He is just an instigator. He has no clear motivation, and he's played terribly.
Oh, yeah. I just like to stir the pot.
That's all he is. He's a shit stirrer.
Yeah.
I happen to know you guys keep something behind a locked door. Yes, it's our valuables. Yeah. Right, but it's a locked door. So I've been letting everyone know about your locked door and the things inside.
I know about how you doctors have a patient.
Yeah,
this guy knows nothing.
I'm telling everybody that you've been doctoring on people.
Yeah, and he's not blackmailing him. He's just like, I know something.
It's true. At no point is he trying to get like a definitive thing. Like, if you pay me, I'll shut up.
He basically knows nothing, and he's just rubbing the nothing he knows in people's faces. He's the worst character we've seen in one of these movies.
Yeah, he is. And if he had been played slightly better, probably wouldn't be, calling so much attention to it. Because you do always need a character who moves stuff forward, even if that character is an idiot.
Slightly more thought put to this character, a little bit more motivation, and maybe if he had seen a little bit more to indicate nefarious stuff.
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe if he had seen that severed arm get taken to Frankenstein's lab or something, anything.
Yeah, if he had seen one of those, like, well, I'm not going to let this piece go to waste.
Yeah.
Something like that. But we don't get that.
Yeah.
Instead, it's this ridiculous kind of like.
And so Margaret seems to be instantly into Carl in this new body. Because she's like,
kind of.
You should have my address and come see me.
She's like, you can't quite read if she's like, oh, what a handsome young man. Or if she's just like, this is what I do for anyone I see suffering, and I just want to be the nicest person in the world.
The thing, though, that tips it for me is here's my address, come and see me.
Yeah, that
seems
is true.
Like, hey, in my new body, I could do Sylvia Trench.
that thought balloon does pop up above his head.
Yeah.
Really weird addition that they put.
I did think it was weird. I'm like, that movie didn't exist in the time this movie was made or the time it's set.
Yeah. So, all right. Are you saying that I made that up? Are you calling me a fucking liar?
I am. And look, you've been lying a lot on this podcast, and it's time we confront it.
It's kind of true. And my name isn't Brendan Jones.
Yeah. Well, we knew that long ago. That's been.
My name is Frankenstein.
My name is Jonesenstein. I just took the Stein part off of it, and it's the
Stein. That's there are so many Jonesensteins in Germany, though. I'm certainly not the one you've heard about.
Yeah. That's why I changed it to Jones.
That's the whole thing. Is she does instantly seem either into him or just taken with him.
Yeah.
And she gives her address, which is going to be important. Tucks it into.
That's another plot point, right? That just like we need to be able to get him to her place. So.
And this is another like he's like, oh, dude, that's good. So even though I know I'm supposed to stay here and get better, I got to get out of this bed and get under my clothes. Time for Carl to go on a walkabout.
He goes, ooh, these straps are really uncomfortable. Could you undo these? She's like, of course. I shouldn't check with the doctor about why these are here.
I don't like this needle in my arm that keeps feeding me all that liquid food.
Yeah, you want to just yank that? Just go ahead and give it a yank.
You know what? Yeah, I will. Because that looks very uncomfortable.
Yeah, so she undoes his straps and is like, well, bye, see ya. Then we cut back to clearly Up Patient has just been blathering on to Dr. Cleve forever. And he's talking about, nope, never use soap, just like the monkeys. I love the monkeys, and they never get sick. They have a healthy layer of dirt on them.
Mickey Dolenz, Peter Tork.
Daydream believer.
Michael Nesmith never gets sick. Actually, at this point, are they all dead?
No. Mickey Dolenz is still alive because he's like a fucking Trump guy.
Oh no, is he?
Yeah. And I think one of the Peters is still alive. I don't remember his Nesmith or Dolenz.
No. Both of them are gone.
Both of them are gone. I
remember.
Then it's just Mickey Dolenz.
I think Michael Nesmith is still alive.
Oh, that's sorry. That's what I'm thinking. Michael Nesmith is the other one who's still alive.
Okay,
but Dolenz is a full-on like he shows up on Fox News. He's a crazy right winger.
And Dave Davy Jones, he's dead.
I know. The only one worth a damn died.
Really?
I'd taken a hard stance there, but yeah, Davy Jones was the talent.
Oh man, no, I love me some Michael Nesmith. Not the best singer of the bunch, but come on, man. He basically invented MTV, and his mom invented liquid paper.
You're right. Outside of his work in the Monkees, he has done a lot.
Yes. Sorry, we got way off the topic.
And he goes, yeah, the Monkees. And here's the thing, they don't even need to eat meat. And he's like, wait, what was that? Yeah, the Monkees, they don't eat meat. He's like, oh my God. And he runs out. Cleve runs out of there because now he's on something.
the chimpanzee is being fed meat. What's up with that?
Yeah. And so he runs to the lab and he asks Frankenstein, "How long has that chimp been eating flesh?" He says. That's really he's like, "Well, ever since I put that orangutan brain in him."
Very casual about it. He's like, "Oh yeah, but yeah, I mean there were some things.
Yeah.
He ate his wife.
His happily wedded wife.
And that ended my calendar side business right away."
Yeah, that's why I had to start working on building the body. I needed a new source of income.
They were a duo, and no one wanted just a calendar of just Otto.
Yeah. Turns out it was the two of them, not just Otto. The Otto calendars. I still have a bunch if you want one. There's a whole stockpile of them in the back. You can just take one.
Here's 1857, 1858.
Don't you want to know what June the 1st, what day of the week it was in 1857?
And look at that picture there. Doesn't he make a fine knight? I made that armor for him myself. I don't know.
You're a weird guy, Frankenstein, but not in the way I initially thought. Exactly.
Exactly. I like to keep you guessing. It's not just about bringing corpses to life.
And so he's like, yeah, the brain just got knocked around a little bit, and he turned into a fucking cannibal. What are you gonna do? He's a cannibal, but he's totally happy. Look at him. He does. He says he's very happy and healthy, so we can't get too mad at this cannibal monkey.
It's kind of true. He's like, yeah, he's charming.
Yeah. He's a good fella. He gets all excited when I turn on the equipment. And then I just like Cleve's just like, well, aren't you worried this is gonna happen to Carl? He's like, no, I've taken every precaution. We've kept Carl strapped down and calm. Cut to Carl. Actually not cut to yet, because he's like, also, while we're on the subject, let me show you something else I've made. And he pulls back the sheet on it and he's like, look, it's me.
Well, they do sort of like this. It's supposed to be a hidden reveal.
Yeah.
Because he pulls back the sheet and Cleve is looking at like, what is this? The expression is so weird. I'm like, it's got to be something horrible or but yeah, instead you don't see what it is because they want to save that for the end. But you're like, what has he made?
Mm-hmm.
Is it perhaps?
No, they show it's him. I have it written down here. That
they actually
pulls back the sheet to show a body that looks exactly like him. It's Cushing on the table.
Holy hell, my version didn't have that.
Oh, interesting.
My version just had Clee's reaction.
No, this showed an actual close-up of it's Cushing with the stitches around his face.
Well, then I was giving the movie a little bit more credit because the version I have, you don't see that till the end, and he has the tattoo and whatever.
Well, they show his face, and then they pan down, and you see the tattooed arm hanging off of the table.
Okay, so in my version, that surprises.
That's really weird that there's a different version that doesn't show that. Because so far we haven't run into anything else that makes them different.
No, it's true. I'll have to investigate where I got this. But anyway, okay, there it is. It is. It's a
so apparently you get this reveal if you're watching the version on iTunes, like I did.
There you go. That well before the end that he has made a replica body of himself.
Yeah, he pulls up a card here.
Yeah, he does, and he has he has saved the best parts from the poor people he has chopped up.
Yeah,
including the pickpocket's arm with the sweet ass.
Can I ask this? Is it just an ego thing why he's built a body that looks like him?
I think he's always thinking several steps ahead.
And so he's like, in case anybody kills me, I can just come right back, and I'm cool with this look. Nothing to be improved here.
I do think that's the part that's really vain. He does not make like another perfect human body. It's him going, I love this look. And if I come back, I gotta look exactly the same, only with a sweet ass tattoo.
It's vain and yet a huge tactical mistake, because wouldn't it be more efficient for him to not look like himself and continue on?
It's much smarter to just end up being someone else entirely, and you could even then call yourself Frankenstein, and no one would expect you're the other Frankenstein. You'd be like going, oh no, I know I have that name, but look at me, I'm completely different than that guy.
But don't look at my lab.
Whatever you do, don't go.
So now we cut to Carl
Don't go in there,
Do
man.
not go in that lab.
Go in that lab.
Carl is now, he's dressed and he's sitting on the bed and he's stands and tries to get his legs to work walking. He's trying to get used to walking.
Yeah.
And then he sees himself in the mirror and he's like, oh, that's me. Which I imagine would be incredibly disturbing to look in a mirror and see not your own face looking back.
I mean, being in a different body would be a real head trip. And I will say that a lot of your cyberpunk fiction and cyberpunk the game, it's a lot of that, like, oh, because you can become someone else entirely. And oh, what a strange thing to be walking around in a body that isn't your original.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's always a cool concept. There's a reason it runs throughout science fiction, right? The idea of being other like that is always interesting.
And our good friend here, Michael Gwynn, like I said before, he does a really good job with. I mean, it's not like he gets a lot of time to do these things in. It's the movie keeps moving, so it doesn't spend a lot of time of him going, oh, strange body, and oh, I'm walking again. So it's just within these little moments, and you're like going, that actor is doing the work. And so far, he's a very sympathetic creature.
I really like him in this movie. I really do.
Yeah.
I think he's really good in this.
Yes.
And obviously the script is giving him a lot to do, but he is just sinking his teeth into every moment the script gives him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more than Karloff even got to do.
It's true.
Which, I mean, and no shame to the genius that was Boris Karloff.
No, of course not. But this is the first movie. If you can also say Ghost of Frankenstein, but one of the first movies where we have right off the bat an intelligent creature.
Yeah.
Because this is just a brain transfer into a new body. This isn't a damaged brain or something like that. So he's talking, and that's a surprise. Like, oh my God, new voice. He's walking. Oh my God, and this is a new body for me. But he can express feeling and thought.
It's so interesting because this decision, obviously, with just making it a brain and a new body, deviates it from the novel, but it also pulls it closer to the novel by allowing him to be an intelligent creature.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. He doesn't have to learn about fire being bad or wine and cigars being good. He's already had wine and cigars, and possibly he's been burned by fire. This is an intelligent person.
I think I like the first Frankenstein movie more just as I think it's a more fun movie, but I think this one is a more interesting film. And maybe a more certainly as a piece of drama. The first one has more of the crazy stuff in it.
This one is where they just said, oh, we don't have to stick to the formula. We're now free of... And the first movie wasn't even really trying to do Mary Shelley's book. No. But this is where they're like going...
Frankenstein beats.
Yeah, they're like, we are free now to just follow this character and what he does next. And by the character, we're talking about the doctor,
which is
not the creature.
Also every
movie will have a new creature. It won't be really a continuing...
Smart. That's really smart.
It's one way to go.
Yeah.
The other way is to allow the original creature to grow and mature, like the book did,
and Universal started to, and then backed away from.
Yeah, well, fuck them.
It is interesting.
I'm sorry.
They
I'm very angry. I'm very sorry.
Yeah, I mean, we'll say that so far Hammer is taking more risks than Universal at the very least.
Yeah, I just think that they. Also, they are enjoying a different era and a different country's version of what can and can't be filmed. So they are enjoying more freedom than Universal had. If Universal had more freedom back in the 30s and 40s, I'm sure we'd have seen some batshit insane horror movies. I don't think Universal was a prim company. It was just like, well, this is all we can do right now. But cut to late 50s, early 60s, and in Britain, which has always been a little bit more liberal, funny enough, with what you can and can't actually film and air. And they're just like going, dude, look what we can do. And it's in Technicolor. Or, it's in supernatural Technicolor. So you're going to see blood. You're going to see plenty of it.
And that blood is going to be vivid. It's going to be the reddest blood you've ever seen.
You're going to be thinking after, I could have had a V8. That's how red this blood is.
That is, that's interesting. When these movies were released, V8 sales went way up.
They did.
They eventually partnered. I think one of these later movies it is. Blood
Hammer
brought to you by
and V8.
Blood provided by V8.
So
Carl,
so
Carl
staggers out.
Yeah, he staggers out. He flops out through the window and then finds his way back to Frankenstein's lab.
Mm-hmm.
And he's looking around and he finds his old body and he seems to be horrified that Frankenstein has kept that body.
Even though he was told that's what they would do.
And quickly, Frankenstein just happens to have like a crematorium on site.
Yeah.
And that's going. That's already open.
Stoked and ready to go. That thing is on fire.
Keep that thing 24/7. You never know when we may have to just burn a body real fast.
So yeah, he chucks his old body into the flames.
Yeah.
But he is also not alone.
He is not. We have this guy who I just described as guy who will later know as janitor, a large, burly man.
Yes, a large dude.
Yeah.
And he just eyewitnesses.
Yeah. This is the. I was gonna say this is basically the same guy that Batman puts that bomb on in Batman Returns.
That's a reference I wasn't ready to go to, but yes, absolutely.
It's a reference I'm always ready to go to. It's anything in those Burton Batman movies. But yeah, it is that same body type, which I know is a highly specific thing. People are like, that one penguin henchman who, yeah.
Let me just get out that DVD and find that scene. Hold on, John.
Yeah.
And there it is.
Yeah.
Why, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. A gleeful Batman murder, by the way, in that movie.
There were a few too many in that movie. I do love Batman Returns, but good Lord, he was dropping bombs and blowing people up left and right.
Yeah. He
that's
ignites a guy
Batman,
with the exhaust from the Batmobile.
He does indeed.
But by the way, speaking of a movie that a known director used a lot of studio money to make something really weird.
Oh yeah.
That movie is crazy weird.
But with Warner Brothers, and still to this day, they just don't know or care what to do about those comic book properties, and they could go, well, you seem to have done all right with the first one. Go ahead and do a second one. You want it all to be kind of black and white, and you want to have Danny DeVito with webbed flippers? Okay, man, you do you.
Whatever that black goo coming out of his mouth was, I don't know. But I love it, man. I love that movie.
Do you need to have a lot of things have candy cane stripes on them? Because you're really going for that shit. All right.
Burton either loves or hates Christmas, and I don't know which from watching his movies.
I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I will say, A Nightmare Before Christmas really is an uplifting Christmas movie.
I watch it every year. I love that movie.
In goth,
yeah,
Halloween symbolism.
I don't love the whole market that grew up around it particularly. I just really like that movie.
Well, I mean,
I don't own any of the fashion line or anything like that.
That's the thing, is that Disney's not going to not run whatever possible merchandising they can get away with, and there's a whole goth crowd out there
there are hot topics to fill with stuff.
We can turn something sweet and meant for children into kind of ironic goth stuff.
Yeah.
Look at me. I'm like Sally. Great. I love your stitchery. That's great. Awesome.
I love a girl with stitchery, though. Come on.
You're right. That's my kind of gal. I love a gal that's stuffed full of dead leaves.
Yeah.
Anywho, so speaking of stuff full of dead leaves,
yeah, here comes this burly janitor, I guess, who we've never seen at any other point in the movie. He comes downstairs. He's like, "What's all this then? What's going on down here? Somebody breaking into the lab?"
Dead on.
Thank you. I practiced a lot before this. He comes down. Let's be honest, looking for trouble. And he comes down and he sees the chimp banging on his cage. He's like, "Oh, was that you?" And he picks a fight with a caged chimpanzee.
He does. Yeah, it's a weird scene. And yet, I didn't even know this. It was what I wanted in this movie.
Because he's just like, "Come here, monkey." And then the monkey bites him. He's like, oh, you're gonna get it. And he goes over and grabs this little chair, and he's like, you're gonna get it. I'm gonna kill this monkey. Even though presumably doesn't this guy work for Frankenstein?
This is what he just needed if he's going to be this important. And this isn't the scene I'm talking about, him and Otto.
Yeah.
But if he's going to be this important in the later part of this movie, we should have had a through line. Like, he should have been introduced early on, and you should have had maybe Frankenstein saying to Cleve, like, well, that's the janitor Chuckles, and he's got a bit of an attitude, but he does the job and he keeps his mouth shut.
Yeah.
Just introduce him, because
he's also an unhinged, violent maniac waiting to go off at the drop of a hat.
Because he does just show up here in the last chunk of the movie and is suddenly important, and we're like, who is this dude?
I know. Yeah, when he showed up from up top of the building where he was to come down to the lab, I'm like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
And he's coming down going, nobody better break into this lab. Like, yeah. I'm sorry, you know what this lab is? What's going on?
And you are. Yeah. And this is regarding. Yeah.
And so Carl is hiding, and he accidentally starts up Dr. Frankenstein's equipment. He's like, "I hear you." And he goes after him, and he sees Carl, who's now cowering, going like, "Please, no, I don't mean any trouble." And he goes to hit Carl with this chair, and I believe he does. Oh no! First, Carl throws a jar of chemical at him. Then the guy breaks the chair over Carl. Then he punches him, and then Carl's like, "Please, no." He's asked no questions about who this guy is or what he wants or anything like that.
This janitor just goes batshit homicidal on this poor cowering dude.
It's just like, finally, my chance to murder.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. And so
I will say he deserves what's coming to him.
He does, and that's what I was thinking here. It's like, this is not him drowning an innocent little girl. This is him killing a man who is apparently a menace to society and probably is a serial killer unto himself that we just don't see.
Probably. Maybe he brought Frankenstein some bodies.
Yeah.
I would not doubt it.
I just found this body on the street.
But here he only serves the purpose of, like, Carl doesn't want to do it, but Carl has had enough. And there is a beast inside of Carl.
Well, he finally pushes Carl into the table of all the chemicals, and that falls apart and everything. And then Carl gets up with this insane. When he looks up, Michael Gwen is just giving this like,
yeah.
Suddenly, it's a William Shatner from the Two Kirks episode of Star Trek.
I knew you were gonna do it.
Episode called "The Enemy Within."
The Enemy Within. I knew you were gonna go with that reference. We brought it before.
It's that exact. The low light lit differently than any other part of the room, and the hard turn into camera with the "no, I'm crazy" look.
Except it's not the weird piggy nostril look where I always did piggy squeaks under that on Kirk.
This guy doesn't have the skills of a Shatner, is what we're saying. He's a good actor, but he's no Shatner. Is what we're saying.
There's only one Shatner,
and
I dread the day he leaves us.
I don't think he will. I think he's going to outlive the rest of the Star Trek cast. I think he's determined for that.
I think he's going to be beamed on board that ship that's following the Hale-Bopp comet.
Yeah.
And he'll join the Heaven's
He's like, I've already written books where I come back from the dead. Why can't I do it in real life?
I'm still talking to a bunch of computer scientists about uploading my consciousness.
I need to make 10 more Star Trek movies. You know what? I love that when Picard came on, he's like, I'm available to do a Kirk series. Give me a call. I'm waiting by the phone.
Bill, you're in your 80s, and we love you.
I could still throw down.
Bill, you've been eating a lot of delivery pizza. I mean, a lot. And we love you. You're just not quite Kirk fit anymore.
Oh, he would sign up in a second to be de-aged in something, though.
Oh, you know it.
Yeah.
He's probably sitting there going, can they do the whole body?
Yeah. Get me back to 60s shape.
My voice has not changed. Yes, it has, Bill. No.
No, it hasn't.
I'll sound exactly the same. We're off on that little tangent.
We are. And I'll always go off on a Shatner tangent.
Understood. So, Carl is now
Carl strangles this man to death.
Yes, he does.
Well, first the guy punches him, and Carl just takes it, which is cool, and then looks back at him with those crazy eyes, and then seizes upon him and strangles him to death.
Yeah, Carl really didn't have a lot of time to be an innocent.
And then I love this moment, and they don't follow through on this in the movie, and I wish they did. He sees the guy dead. He looks over at the chimp who's shoveling meat into his mouth. Then he looks back at the guy, and he starts drooling. And I'm like, oh my God, is this going to turn into a cannibal situation?
That was in my version. In my version.
Yeah.
And I mean, and so I was thinking the same thing, like, oh my God, is he going to eat that guy?
I'm like, if the rest of this movie is this dude going around eating people, I love it. I'm so on board for this. He's a cannibal loose on the streets.
I'm not sure what he does to that woman later. I'm not sure what he does.
Her body's under a sheet.
Yeah.
But there's no line. I wish there had been like, it seems like there's bite marks all over her and chunks of her are missing. And you're like, oh, he ate her.
Yeah.
I'm a sick movie viewer. I'm looking for sick and twisted stuff where I'm like, please eat people.
Well, I'm also just saying, when I'm watching these, I am sitting there going, how far are you going, Hammer?
Yeah.
This is 58. How far are we
That's
going?
exactly it. And because we know they go farther.
I know. Next week I'll be like going, what are you going to do? What are you going to do for us now, Hammer?
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? I can't wait.
What's that mummy getting up to, huh? I bet
What's
it's
he getting
fucked
up to? Yeah. Is Christopher Lee going to be body painted to look Egyptian? Because I'm on board for that shit.
If I recall, I believe he does.
Yeah, he does. He gets a lot of bronze toner.
Yeah.
And eyeliner.
He's an imposing mummy, is what I remember. I remember loving that one. So
I'm down for that shit.
So yeah, then he doesn't eat the guy. He just runs out, and he's terrified. I think because he kind of realizes, like, I was just thinking about eating that guy. Oh God. Yeah. And he runs out, and then it cuts back to Victor and Hans have they come back up to the room, and Carl's gone, and they're like, what's going on? Weren't you talking to him? It's like, what did you say to him? He's like, well, I just told him that we were gonna parade him around for scientists. And Frankenstein's just like, why would you tell him that? Don't tell him that. God.
It's true. He's like going, oh, you idiot.
They're like, well, where would he have gone? Oh, the lab. He'd go back there, of course. And
he only knows 2 places.
They run back to the lab. They see the dead guy, and he's just like, oh yeah, that was my janitor. He must have killed him. And look at this.
Oh, that was my janitor. Awful human being. Just one of the worst.
Not mourning for a second.
And that's coming from me.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He made my skin crawl. Dr. Frankenstein. He was freaking me out. So he then they find the burnt the like smoldering shoe that they're able to put together and go, he must have burned his old body.
He burned his old body. He didn't want to be reminded of that. That's horrible. Well, that makes sense.
This may not be going well.
One thing I do like about it, even though it is a little rushed here at the end of the movie, is they are showing us these stages of Carl's degeneration, and it's not, you do debate it all the way through. Like, how much of this is something he can't control, as in just a physical decay that, why would that be happening? Or is it his old brain turning his new body into his old body somehow?
Yeah.
It's an interesting, like you said, there's meatier stuff to work on in this screenplay.
It would have been cool if he looked in the mirror and he saw the monster.
Yeah.
That would have been the Dark Knight Returns thing, but that would have been
the Two-Face thing. Yeah.
That would have been really cool though. And it's just like, can't you see I'm a monster? And they're like, what are you talking about?
You're absolutely
look at this face.
Yeah. Dr. Doom with his one single scar.
Oh yeah. I do like that take on Dr. Doom.
Yeah, it gets rewritten out of continuity a million times.
And then he's like a monstrous, deformed thing, and I'm like, oh, I like the guy who was so vain that a single imperfection.
Cloned Reed Richards' body or whatever. It's a crazy comics.
Follow just Dr. Doom's history in comics, and you're going to be into some wacky shit.
It's not enough that he's one of the greatest scientists in the world, and he's a fucking leader of his own country.
He's also a sorcerer.
He's also a sorcerer.
Yeah.
Second, possibly only second to Stephen Strange. You're like, that's too much for one guy.
I love that one shot that Mignola drew. That's the two of them.
It's great. Where he's like, look, what if I help you get your mother's soul out of hell?
It's good stuff. It's good stuff. And the most recent Doctor Doom miniseries that came out last year, really good stuff. Really enjoyed
Okay.
it. Really enjoyed it.
All right. You've been listening to Doomcast with Brendan Jones and John Campbell.
Look, I will Shatner, Doctor Doom. You're pulling me into James Bond. I'm just being pulled into all of the things that I'll talk about all day long.
And this is also proof that we won't only be distracted on bad films. We both really enjoy
this movie's great. This movie's great, but still, somebody said Doctor Doom.
The dog whistle. Someone say Doctor Doom.
Victor Von Doom? What? Where?
Man, did they screw up his ultimate version. I was like, what a dumb take on the character, made me angry. All right, moving on.
So, meanwhile, and then Frankenstein says, when he was fighting with this disturbed homicidal janitor, his brain may have gotten damaged, so that may not be good. Then we cut to Margaret riding home on her horse, and she gives her horse to some attendant that she's got, one of her people.
And she feeds some ponies. And
she goes, I'm just going to go check on my ponies.
And she's like, do you want some sugar? Yes. And how about you?
Because
like,
this woman,
French, this is a whole new side of you.
She is just a pure innocent in this movie. She's
really
just a wonderful, sweet lady. And then she hears a commotion in the barn, and what's this? It's Carl. He's in the barn, and she's like,
he's hiding in the straw.
Yeah. What? And he's like, I need your help.
This is one of the things where it's like you were instantly attracted to someone, gave them your number, and you're like, well, maybe something will happen. Then you get home and they're waiting for you on your stoop. It's that kind of thing, like, yeah, this is a little stalkery. I did give you my address. Didn't really think I'd see you the same night. Hi, how you doing? She handles it well, though.
She does.
I had no other way to go.
Yeah, and she's like, okay, well, I'll go get Dr. Frankenstein. She's like, no, Dr. Stein. He's like, no. Don't get him. Whatever you do, by God, don't get him. She's like,
no.
Okay. She goes, well, how about this? You stay here. I'll go somewhere, and just don't go anywhere till I get back. He's like, I can do. And so, yeah, she says, I promise I won't tell Dr. Stein, but I'm going to go talk to someone. And so then we go to Cleve's office, and she comes in there, and she's like, yeah, Carl is in my barn, and he seems to be really freaked out. And he's like, well, I'll get Dr. Stein. It's like, oh no, he really doesn't want that. How about just you come? And so he goes with her. He agrees to come. And then Carl is in the barn, and he notices, he goes to lift his hand up, and he has trouble lifting his hand up. He's like,
it's getting worse. His arm is becoming a twisted, useless thing.
It is. And then he stands up, and his leg doesn't quite work, and he's having trouble walking. He's got his
getting that
leg
limp.
again. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, no.
Yeah. It's the classic I am becoming a monster moment.
Yeah, exactly. And so Margaret returns with Hans, and Carl is gone now.
Yep.
And they're like, that's not good. Cut to,
I love this scene.
A teenage couple, 1860s style.
This is a weird scene, and I love it because here we have...
this is a piece of comic relief I don't mind.
Yeah, because it's so left fieldy, but kind of works, just because this is almost like late 1950s version of the slasher flick, clueless teenage scene where, the teenagers will be making out, and then, of course, so the creature will come up and kill them. But here we have an 1860s teenage couple where the boy is looking at ants on the ground. He's like, well, look at these are fascinating. This is at night. Mm-hmm. And she's like going, yeah, the ants are cool. Listen, I don't have a lot of time here. Yeah. Don't you want to do something else other than look at ants? And he's like what?
He's like, why? Ants are fascinating.
He's clueless, and she is clearly horny. Yeah. She's horned up. And I'm like, this is an interesting take.
Like this scene. And then he's like, there's a lot you can learn from ants. He's like, yeah, well, the one thing you can learn from ants is they just get on with it. And he's like, get on with what? And then she's like, that's it. Yeah, I'm out of here, you dumb fuck. Which I thought was shocking language for the time.
Yeah. it's not the dude is like going, Jesus, come on, just give me a handy already.
It's her going, come on, let me give you a handy already.
And he's clueless.
Yeah.
And
then he's just like, okay, well, bye.
He does. He just goes, well, all right, well, see you later.
This is basically Squeaky Voice Teen from The Simpsons as a 1860s character.
And I said, I'll just take my hands and go.
Yeah.
So I kind of wish he had been the one to die, but
no. Instead, of course, Carl comes out and grabs her and strangles her to death.
It's just so unclear what his motivation is here. It's sort of like, okay, his brain is, I guess, damaged, and now he must kill. There's no reason for him to attack her.
But it's interesting because later in the movie he isn't killing people then, so I don't really know what his deal is.
Yeah, what his problem with this poor young woman is.
Other than it's just like, well, it's about that time when the monster starts killing people in this movie.
Yeah. So he strangles her.
Mm-hmm.
Does he do anything else?
We starts don't know. Dragging her body because that's when the guy sees her. He's like, hey, what's going on down there? Oh, yeah, he does.
Sir, drag her.
Can you bring her back?
Hey, hold on. She was going to tell me something that's more fascinating than ants.
I can't think of anything, but she claimed it was. She wanted to get on with it.
So the cops are on the scene pretty damn quick.
Yeah, because Cleve and Frankenstein are now riding in a carriage back to Margaret's place with Frankenstein going, you should have told me the second she came here. You should have come and got me. Like, what do you... most of the end of this movie is him just chiding Cleve. Yeah. And then they get stopped.
You wouldn't? I would have totally been the same way.
They get stopped by a cop who's just like, well, hold up there. And Frankenstein's like, what's the meaning of this? He's like, oh, Dr. Frankenstein.
No, Dr. Stein.
Dr. Stein, yeah, whatever. We all know who he is. Dr. Stein, there's been a murder. They do always seem to stress there's been a murder in these movies.
Yeah. And they're like, hey, can you come take a look real quick?
Yeah, how about you give us a quick investigation and take some notes?
He looks at the body and the sheet goes, well, she's totally dead. Looks like she was killed.
Yeah.
That's about all I got for
Oh, thank you, Dr. Stein. But then we see the too distraught to speak squeaky voice to 1860 squeaky voice teen.
I actually felt bad for him.
Yeah. And I love, he can't speak, so the cop is just like, well, when I got here, he told me that he saw a very strange man, more animal than man, who killed her, you know. And Frankenstein and Cleve kind of give each other a look, going like, oh, I think we know who that is.
They go, is there a family around here named Talbot?
Yeah.
You know, we don't want to give anything away, but I think it's a werewolf.
It's probably a werewolf. Anyway, bye.
They probably are going, well, it's probably a werewolf.
Well, they do run back to their carriage, and I like that Frankenstein's like, I'll send my report about the murder later. Anyway, we have to go, but I'll fax over that paperwork real quick.
I faxed you those numbers. I have to go.
So we then just cut to Carl creeping around Margaret's place.
Yeah.
And he's just sort of looking around, and he peers in a window where there's a big fancy party going.
This is a stock scene.
There's a string quartet and a bunch of people in fancy dress, and they're all sitting there going, oh, what a lovely night.
It's very much the universal thing of like, oh, you've got to have something where the high society folk are all having some big thing that will get disturbed.
This movie, at the very least, is actually about high versus low society.
It is true.
Which is nice to see. Like, Universal was always just in high society. It wasn't really... didn't have anything to say about society.
I will say that when Carl makes his appearance here, he's not looking good.
He is
and
not.
It's not about the fact that he is wearing shabby, lower-class gentleman's clothes.
Yeah.
He's got his arm all hooked up. His eye has gone squinky.
Yeah. It is a distinct squinky eye.
Yeah. Thank you, Popeye the movie.
Yeah.
He's got the squinky eye, and he's got the limp, and he's just coming apart, man.
Well, first, Frankenstein rushes into this party, and Cleve, and they're like, oh, we've interrupted a party. And Frankenstein pulls Margaret aside. He goes, I need you to tell me everything. Like, what kind of state was Carl in? Did he say anything like this? Did he seem murdery?
Did Did he call me by a different name or
Yeah.
any? I'm just asking.
And
Just
she's
asking
like,
for a
"Nah, he
friend.
seemed a little freaked out, but other than that, pretty normal."
Certainly not the type who'd go kill an innocent girl.
Yeah, and
Oh,
I like this where he's just like, he's like, "Oh, okay. Well, anyway, sorry to bother you." And then immediately Carl crashes into this party looking crazy and monstrous. And he
man.
seeks right towards Margaret until he spots Frankenstein. And then I do love the monsters going, "Frankenstein."
It's great. It's like he is at his wit's end, and all the stuff he knows about, oh, we should keep this a secret and don't be telling. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
So yeah, right in front of all these society stuffed shirts, he just goes Frankenstein,
I love
or he
it.
actually says Baron Frankenstein, or something. He says
Yeah,
the
I
whole
think he does
thing,
say Baron Frankenstein, yeah.
and everyone is like, oh,
I did want Cushing to pull a, like, what, me? And look behind him, like, is it
where,
him?
where
This guy? Is it that guy? Was that the guy?
No, instead he
Yeah.
looks
That guy. No,
really
yeah.
for the first time in this movie, and perhaps even the second one, he's like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah.
It's like, "Oh man, jig's kind of up."
Well, hoisted on my own petard again.
And Carl, does he collapse here?
He comes to him and he's like, "You have to help me, Baron Frankenstein."
Yeah,
and
he's kind of clinging on. Yeah, there you
Because
go.
you think he's coming to like choke him, but he's like, "Please help me," and then he falls to
Yeah.
the ground. And then it
Yeah.
cuts to back to the council, and they're like, "Yeah, so the guy come in, called him Frankenstein, and then he just dropped dead."
Yeah.
They're like,
So that's Carl's end right there.
Yeah.
He literally kind of just degenerated and died. Sad.
So I
That's
guess the
very
plan wasn't so great.
Apparently not. So he still needs to do a little bit more work. He's still not ready to create woman. So
But he will nail man minutes
Ooh.
later. Yeah, I know. I heard it too.
Yeah. I don't remember the Hammer film Frankenstein nailed man.
But the end of the movie suggests he has perfected the thing, the experiment.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So his secret is out, and
Yeah.
yet he isn't being hauled off to jail immediately. Instead, they're talking about it.
I like that he does to be like, "Oh shit," but I do kind of wish he had been like, "Well, why are you all so surprised, like that I'm Frankenstein?" And if he had given a villain monologue here, that would have been pretty sweet. But
Yeah, he doesn't get a villain monologue. Instead, he's like, "I will just return to business as usual, and people will forget about it in time."
He is pretty cool about this because the council they have the scene where they talk about all this, and they're like, now that he's Frankenstein, we can run him out of. Now that we know he's Frankenstein, we got to run this guy out of town. He's got to go. To which I thought, is this going to turn into Angry Villagers? Because that's not really a Hammer thing.
True.
And it doesn't.
I think we do get some angry villagers in the Carmilla films.
We might, yeah, in those. But here we don't get angry villagers. We just get some council members and a policeman later to arrest him.
Yep. But
instead,
they're on their way,
it cuts back to Cleve and Frankenstein, and Cleve's like, "You got to get out of town. You got to go somewhere else right now." He's like, "I'm not going anywhere."
Yeah.
And I love this where he's like, "The reveal of my identity was always something I was prepared for." He's like, "I always knew this would come. The jig would be up at some point. So let's not freak out, man." Like,
yeah, he's like, "Cool, buddy. Just play it cool."
God damn, Cushing's cool in this thing.
I know. But then he goes into his hospital for the poor.
Yeah.
And
this may have been a miscalculation on his part where he's like, "I'm just going to go back to treating these people as normal."
Up patient
Yeah.
has led this insurrection where now not only do all the patients know that he is the infamous Baron Frankenstein, they refuse to be touched by him, and they're like, "Butcher!" and they're yelling at him,
"Get away from me!
You're a killer!"
Yeah. "He's gonna kill you next!"
And then they literally tear him limb from limb, pretty much.
Yeah, they basically beat him to death.
It's kind of, again, Jimmy Sangster, hats off. This is a cool way to take out a Frankenstein movie.
Yeah.
Is that these
Could you imagine if this has just been the end? Like they're all clubbing him and kicking him, and the camera just kind of pans out, and you're just like, "Oh!" Or the police arrive and they're like, "We're here to arrest." Oh no!
Yeah, the common people that he so disdains. Well, he actually disdains all human beings because he believes himself superior. But the idea that these lowly people would actually be the ones to give him justice, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
So yeah, the cops come in and basically Cleve's like, dude, they already got to him.
Well, yeah, because Cleve takes him back to the lab, and he's all bloodied and beaten, and he's like, "I'm doing all I can," and Frankenstein's just like,
says,
"You know what to do." And that's when the cops come. They're like, "We're here to arrest Frankenstein," and they're like, "It's too late. Look, here's his body. He's dead."
Yeah,
but
I did everything to save him, but they tore him apart.
In the version I watched, I already knew there was a second Frankenstein body, so
I didn't, but I was already starting to suspect.
Yeah,
because that's how my brain works. Once you said you know what to do, and plus the fact I know that we'll see more of Peter Cushing's Frankenstein. So, yeah, so it's a pretty clever thing. Cleve's like, well, the mob already took care of him, so
yeah.
Well, there you go.
Going to arrest here,
and they go,
and I'm certainly not involved in any of this shit. So, don't look at me.
They leave, and then we get a little jump to a whole new place.
Cut to London. We're in foggy London town. Finally in a British place in one of these British films. And
it's a almost familiar setting of a waiting room with lots of ladies, and they're waiting to see a Dr. Frank.
Yeah, is it Dr. Frank or Dr. Frank?
Might say Frank.
Did they say Frank? Because it looks like it's spelled Frank. I was expecting him to do Martin Short's voice from Father of the Bride. Mr. Bonks.
It is spelled with a CK, but they are pronouncing it Dr. Frank. And Cleve's like, well, are you ready? And you see Frankenstein, again, he's washing up, getting ready to see his patients, and just so you can see his sweet tat one more time.
Yeah.
He
looks in the mirror, got a mustache.
Got a
Cushing's
sweet
rocking a mustache, and then
he
walks into
forehead.
into the room to meet his patient, and before he meets the patient, he puts in a fucking monocle. He's in full supervillain mode.
He puts in a fucking monocle.
He's a comic book supervillain. He's got a mustache and a monocle.
Sweet waxed mustache. He's looking badass.
And he's like, "Good evening. I'm Dr. Frank."
Dr. Frank, next patient. And
like, Cleve's his henchman now, and this movie is awesome. It rules.
Oh, it's so good. And it's such a way to take it out.
Ending. I was like, I applauded the end of this movie because I'm like, he is a full-on supervillain. Then this is a supervillain ending.
I love it.
They killed him, and he still gets away.
I love it. Well, in a way, again, this is Sangster, obviously very well versed in pulp. This is very much like a Fu Manchu story. Yes. I know that you can't talk about that character without offending everybody who ever existed, but I understand.
He is a shocking stereotype. There's no question about it. It really,
He was also the origin of a lot of great pulp tropes, especially super brilliant villains. And arranging your own death, knowing that your brain was going to be transplanted.
In a lot of ways, the original super villain.
Yeah, in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And now here's Peter Cushing to carry on the tradition.
Yeah, and so all they did was like go, well, Dr. Frankenstein is our villain, and these creatures are going to be, sometimes they will actually be evil, but most of the time they're going to be these subplots because he's just trying to perfect his great goal. So it's not about the creatures, it's about this guy.
Yeah.
And I love Cushing walking this part. He is living it. He's all I want out of a Dr. Frankenstein. If you're not going to do the original Dr. Frankenstein, this is the one I like.
I love this. I love it so much. I loved him in the first movie, and I love him even more now. It's just, it fills me with such joy, this movie. He's so evil, and I love it.
So, John, are you saying you would recommend to our listeners that they watch Revenge of Frankenstein?
Highly recommend, and we are 3 for 3 on the Hammer movies.
It's very true. We've said that in the Universal, and we'll say it again, is that we know that both of these series start strong, and they will get worse. But right now, Hammer is just sowing its wild oats. It's just getting its ground under it, and it's having a blast. and it will get better before it goes bad.
But
And
the thing is, even Bad Hammer, I kind of love though. Like it's goofy and crazy and nuts.
I think there are some boring passages.
There might be, and I've just forgotten or not seen those.
And here's one that I'm probably unfairly, because I know that you're a fan of it, but their Phantom of the Opera, I was never a big fan of, and I know you like it a lot.
I do, yeah.
So when we get there, and I love Herbert Lom. Don't get me wrong.
Oh,
love
he's great. Yeah.
But it's not my Phantom. I don't like the take. But even so, looking forward to seeing it. But that's not next week. What is next week, John?
Next week we meet a whole new monster in The Mummy. Christopher Lee is The Mummy.
I really like the inventive way they're changing the titles of these from the. Oh wait, no, they're not.
Yeah, they don't call it anything. They don't call it the face of the mummy, anything like that.
By this time, I mean, because this was even in the U.S., it was released as The Mummy.
Mm.
I guess they're like, no one's going to confuse it with 1932. No one's going to sit there going, wait a minute, is this the Karloff one or not?
And to indicate it a little bit, one of my favorite movie posters as well. I love the poster for The Mummy.
I actually had one, I think, was a fold out from a Famous Monsters of this poster. It was up on my wall.
It's a great poster.
It's
one
awesome.
I've almost bought the reprint one sheet of a few times.
It's a gooder. And I have memories of it, and I actually have memories, as I said, but I saw it young. I have memories of actually being scared at certain points of this movie. We'll see.
Yeah.
51-year-old me is probably going to go, yeah, really? Oh, okay. But it's Christopher Lee one more time returning to us. I love that, man. So I'm looking forward to this.
It doesn't, yeah. I haven't seen it in a while, but this was always one of my favorites as a kid. I loved this one.
All right. So that's next week. Join us
next week, indeed. But that's going to finish up this week's episode of Campbell and Jones Meet the Monsters. I'm John Campbell.
Oh, I'm Brendan Jones.
And remember, there are such things as monsters.
Frankenstein!